Welcome back to another week of All Politics Are Local, America's number one pop radio talk show. We are here. We have Zaid Muhammad, who has been a legendary activist for over 40 years. And like, if there's a movement that has been in the Northeast and really around the country, dealing with Black people, violence, economics, dealing with reparations, dealing with in the environment, like Zaid has had some. He either has been involved in it or he knows people who are in it. So thank you for always being here, Zaid. And we also have the one of the person who knows everybody who does stuff in the whole state of New Jersey and probably all of the Northeast. We have the wonderful Donna K. Williams. She just put herself down as Donna.
Everybody.
She can say her name is just Donna K. because everybody knows Donna K. is Donna K. Williams, right? So just be careful when you're driving and talking there, Ms. Williams. So we love you. We want you to be good in this. But thank you for coming back, as always, as a co-host, the person who knows everybody, helping us out all the time. And we have our guest, who's not really a guest. He's kind of like a stand-in co-host. Whenever we want some political analysis, whenever we want something discussed that we're like, we need a real academic perspective, but we want that perspective to know, to be Black, to understand like stuff that you might not get in school, but a real good academic, detailed, thoroughly researched position. We call on Seton Hall University's Dr. Kelly Harris. Dr. Kelly Harris, you leads the Africana Studies program at Seton Hall. And we are, as always, honored to have you here.
Thank you.
I just want to jump right in. The first topic that we have is America on the verge of civil war, and a second civil war. And the reason why I ask this is because we saw what happened on January 6th. We see that white supremacy is the greatest actual terrorist threat in the United States. I don't think that's new, but it's new that the United States recognizes it as a terrorist threat because they're not just terrorizing Black people. On January 6th, they started terrorizing white people. You see today that, the Republican
is coming home to roost.
Right. And you see a Republican, right? Like Liz Cheney, who's a Republican leader, conservative. None of us would probably agree with her on any policy she has, as conservative as they come. And she's not getting booted out of the party, but she's being taken from leadership because she was like, when y'all stormed the Capitol on January 6th, that was bad. Trump is bad. We need to move on without him, right? Like, it seems basic. You started an insurrection. So maybe that's a bad thing. So we see all these things going on right now and I just got to ask you, and we all got to just ask you, is America on the verge of a second civil war, right? Like bullets aren't in stock. Like guns sales have been up all for the last year. What's going on, Dr. Harris?
So no, it's not on the verge of a second civil war because the first one never ended. Ooh. So that's the reality. The Civil War has continuously been fought in this by a variety of means. There's an excellent historian named David Blight, and he wrote a book called Race to Reunion. But one of the things he starts off by talking about how the country on the first anniversary, the 50th anniversary of the Civil War, or of the end of the Civil War, how they came together and they lied about it. They lied about its history, and didn't acknowledge the role that slavery played in the Civil War. And that's what this country has a history of doing. When we look all throughout the 19th century, if we look at in our textbooks, when people talk about the Texas Revolution, it really was a revolution around the issue of slavery. How they went, rather than just Davy Crockett and all that good stuff and Sam Austin, it was about slavery. It was about the issue of slavery. When we look at how we talk about the Civil War, people for a long time didn't want to acknowledge that it was about the issue of enslavement. People didn't want to. They ignored W.E.B. Du Bois, who talked about the Civil War being the largest slave rebellion in American history.
Black Reconstruction is a must for every Black household.
That's right. That's
Make
right.
it plain, son.
That's right. And as we traverse throughout the 20th century, we see that the Republicans and their minions have tried to conserve the old way of life, that prioritizes states' rights over human rights and civil rights. And that has never ended. So when we see that, we see those cleavages during the Great Depression and the New Deal. We see those cleavages against Great Society and the war on poverty. We see those cleavages when Reagan comes to office. Those things have never ended. So it's different forms at times, but it's been a consistent struggle in this country. So the Civil War, in my opinion, has never ended.
You're muted, Jonathan.
You muted.
He's steady wrong. He can't hear him.
I know. I said jump in, Donna, Zaid.
Well, I think to your question, the way you asked the question, looking at the violence and how it actually came to Washington itself, I think underneath your question is whether or not this country was capable of dancing into a genuine armed confrontation, right? Whether it be our folks having to burn this place down again, like we have several times as we needed to, or whether it be us having to defend ourselves from the continued violent expressions of the likes of those who, quite frankly, have really not been held genuinely accountable for what they did on January 6th. That's what we really need to be talking about. Why is that not even in the news anymore?
What do you mean? What are you talking about?
Listen, let me put it this way. If there was me and my folks who had bum rushed the Capitol, right? Those of us who survived, right? Because we would have faced the full armed machinery of the state had we done that, right? Like those white folks didn't, right? But those of us who survived would be prosecuted in spectacle fashion. How many stories have you heard in any meaningful media outlets of so-called mainstream, credible, basic American white bread kind that is even discussing the issue anymore? More or less monitoring how a real investigation is supposed to be taking place, holding a whole lot of folks who are on TV. They can't say they wasn't there, they didn't do it. Everybody could see, John, Pete, Sue, Harry, and the dog catcher. They was all there. And that's something that happened in the aftermath of the first Civil War, the shooting war, is that this country was so quick to, quote, reconcile with the other side that the other side regrouped and basically put things almost back to the way the hell they were in the first place. And then but they just reshifted it and called it Jim Crow segregation and instead of slavery.
So do you think that we're reaching a different point in this? Like Dr. Harris, you said that that the Civil War never ended, right? Do you think that a segment of it's heating up like we haven't seen in years?
Well, it's going back to some populist roots that really the last time we've seen this kind of raging like this was in the reaction to the New Deal, and it got reinvigorated again at the tail end of the Civil Rights Movement. So we see, it's interesting when we go back and look at history, we see the same things over and over again. So, for instance, how did the country respond to the rebellions in the 1960s that were over police brutality? We were at one point where the country almost made the right decision. Now, it wouldn't have fundamentally transformed the country, but it was close. And that was during 1967, where you had the Kerner Commission report, But one of the things that they said was the country is on the verge of being torn apart even more if we don't address these fundamental structural issues. But what happened was the rhetoric surrounded, rather than addressing those issues, the rhetoric became law and order and locking people up. And that helped increase mass incarceration in the country. Now, when we look at what's happening right now, the country, again, we had a moment, probably primarily last year, not so much this year, I think, when people were really looking at George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and responding and saying something needs to be done. There wasn't a universal consensus, but there was a lot of consensus among Black and brown and a lot of white allies. But I think, again, we're in a moment where that might start to be turned back again, where people started going away from gravitating towards solutions that could be meaningful and kind of whitewash those issues. And the problem becomes really in Joe Biden and his administration and the fracture that's in the Democratic Party.
Now you said the problem becomes Joe Biden. Explain, what do you mean by that?
So what I mean by that is Joe Biden, when he was running for office, and since he's been in office, he was against the language of abolish the police, and any of those, any discussion around it. I think he bought into the idea that abolishing the police is just a horrific idea, it's a crazy idea, it's a radical idea, it's something he wouldn't do. So I think that kind of limits what you can really do in terms of the issue of police brutality, police misconduct, police corruption. The Democratic Party as well is really trying to distance itself in many ways from the squad and what's called the radical left of the Democratic Party. So they're fractured. And I think because of their fracture, we won't get the type of changes that we really need to get. And the Republicans, while they're also fractured in many ways, but they also, the party has decided to respond to its populist base that Trump helped develop. And that populism is racist, is xenophobic, and it harkens back to the issues that created the Civil War.
Now, so when you're looking at Joe Biden, you're looking at something that can happen that can actually quell a lot of the protests, quell a lot of the animosity, but not accomplish goals. Like, can you break that? Because when you're saying abolish the police, I know that like our current mayor is actually against abolishing the police, but did things for defund the police, right? Like a lot of Black people are like, we don't want to abolish, we want to defund. There are a lot of other people who are like, abolish. Like, is there a difference in those two things as it comes to solutions, or as it comes to moving us forward?
Well, to abolish the police, really, it doesn't mean get rid of the police tomorrow. But what it does mean is do the work to create a society where you don't need the police. And I think that's what people miss in that argument. So nobody's saying disband the police departments right now. People are saying, let's do the work. Let's put the resources in terms of and defund is a part of that discussion. Let's do the work to move the resources from these police departments and incarceration to mental health, to education, to jobs, to training. Let's do that kind of work to restorative justice. Let's do that kind of work and create a society where you don't need the police. And I think that that's what the detractors miss. People are just saying we need to build a society where you do not need the police, where people see each other as their brother and as their sisters. And I think that's what people miss in the discussion. But Biden
and the intensity of the social services that would be needed in order to do that, right? Like,
correct.
I mean, you have to refocus where we spend our tax dollars.
This is not new. So what I mean by that is to make it even plainer. Dr. King said this. Dr. King said this country needs a revolution of values. That's what he said. And that's exactly when people talk about abolishing the police and defunding the police, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about let's change our values in society when you don't need the police. But as long as we have a society that's based on gross materialism, gross individualism, militarism, and is standing on the neck of black and brown people and racism. As long as you have that kind of society, then you're always going to have these particular problems. But you have to address those fundamental issues. Dr. King, that's what he focused on, and when he talked about revolution of values. And I think that's what people miss. And we're still not getting that kind of discussion. My concern is that because Joe Biden is a Democrat, because he has a lot of black supporters, that we don't push him and try to push for that discussion and really try to push for a revolution of values. And finally, there's what leads me to believe this, and not just Joe Biden, it's the Democratic Party at large. Cori Bush put forth a bill to grant people who are incarcerated, felons, the right to vote, their voting rights back while they're incarcerated, which is to me is a radical idea, but it's a sound idea to me, because these states, they count them for census purposes, so you might as well give them the right to vote. But at any rate, over 100 and something Democrats voted against it, in addition to the Republicans. So she didn't even get support from her own party, and that again shows me why the Democratic Party is fractured, as well as the Republican Party.
Dr. Harris, in the Democratic Party, there has been a fracture in the Republican Party since probably immediately after Obama got elected. You've seen the Tea Party evolve. And then now when Trump got elected, you've seen, I don't know, those that support Trump or were behind Trump, they were a little bit more, I don't know what the word would be, but it was like the Tea Party evolved, if you would. Do you see with first the younger progressive Democrats that we're kind of seeing the same type of thing happen with the Democratic Party, and thus as more progressive Democrats become elected, that we will see more progressive values, and that's perhaps what's happening. Like just like you have the fraction on the Republican, you're seeing the same thing on the Democratic side.
Well, I think that's exactly correct. I think the Democratic Party is concerned about the progressive wing of the party. And I think the Democratic Party, the Democratic Leadership Council was created in 1985. And the reason it was created was to get away from its black base, its union base, its progressive base. And I think we're going to see something similar here. I think the Democratic Party does not want the progressives to take over the party. So that battle is going to be very key to watch, particularly if they lose seats. If the Democratic Party loses seats in the midterm elections, then they really are going to try to distance themselves from the progressives, because they're going to blame the progressives. They're going to say, you're the reason why we lost these seats.
Do you see the progressive seats taking more, or you see there's going to be a fight to limit the amount of progressives that get elected? Because in fact, at the last Democratic convention, it was in fact Bernie's values that came in that kind of changed the Democratic platform.
Let's say that
somewhat at the last Democratic convention or the one prior, when you seen a lot of Bernie Sanders values come in, and you see why he wasn't the person that the party selected. They did in fact elect a lot of his values in terms of what was on his platform.
Yeah, but I'm not
so. And you cannot agree. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm not convinced. I think they reached out a little bit to Bernie because they needed him, and they wanted to keep his people in the fold for the election. But I think a lot of people were disappointed, and I hope people don't jump on me for the selection of the vice president because of her track record, and Biden too because of his track record. I think people were a little bit disappointed. So the progressive wing is already, not feeling too good about the Democratic Party and the direction of the party. And I think they're not feeling well about how AOC is being treated within the party. I think the party is already trying to kind of distance himself from AOC and Ilhan Omar, and again Cori Bush and those type of people. So it's going to be an interesting. We're in a battle for the heart of the Democratic Party right now. Same way the Republicans are right now. battle for the heart.
Donna, you didn't ask the question that I thought you would ask. I thought you were going to ask the question, where do you see the Congressional Black Caucus in this landscape?
I think the Congressional Black Caucus is a very progressive. I think they're a progressive caucus. As I attend the legislative conferences, I think that the Black Legislative Caucus is very progressive. But when it comes back and how many of the values that the Congressional Black Caucus, how much of their values kind of become a part of the full Democratic Party, that's another question. But I think the Congressional Black Caucus is in fact progressive.
And one thing I just want to push back on is to see what you think of this would be the infrastructure bill and the COVID bill. From a lot of progressives liked it, right? Like the environmental bill, like it was a big, huge environmental bill, lots of things giving money to poor people, having in the administration someone look at like Susan Rice looking at every policy and explicitly saying, like asking, like, how do these policies affect Black people? Is Joe Biden more progressive than we gave him credit for being?
Well, in some ways he has been. In some ways he has been. That's true. That's true. So that's undeniable. My pushback on Biden is around the issue of the police. That's a big issue. And we need to find out where we're going to go there. And what is the party willing to do around the issue of voting rights? And I think those two things are very primary. And is the party willing to, how dirty is the party willing to get?
And with the voting rights question, I think this goes back to the central question of, are we on the verge of a civil war? And that when you have a situation where the voting rights of Black people are being restricted, where you have Republicans, like something like 70% of Republicans think the last election was stolen. When you have that environment where actual conservatives like Liz Cheney, who's someone who you and I would never vote for, right? Like, or anyone who is even, many people even moderate would not vote for, is like, you're getting demoted because you were like, democracy matters. Like, you can't attack another branch of government. Like, this is just straight up like, she's a conservative, but she's like, I like the institution of democracy. Trump's against the institution of democracy. And she gets demoted in her party. And you have 70% of Republicans who are like, the election was stolen and believe it, right? Like as in willing as June 6th to go to war over. Can you speak to that element of radicalism, a white radicalism that is mainstream inside of like far right white radicalism that is mainstream inside of one of the two major parties, like mainstream, like white supremacy, mainstream inside of one of the two parties in this moment?
Well, I hate to answer a question with the question, but I'm gonna throw you all this question back. At what point in time has this ever happened before, where white nationalism was mainstream in either Democratic or the Republican Party? And then I'll answer the question a little bit more.
Oh yeah, like very mainstream in the Democratic Party, all through the Civil Rights Movement, all back through there. Very mainstream, like all the way up into like post-civil rights, where they went to dog whistles, right? Like whites, like after post-civil rights, isn't that? I mean, I'm not a historian, but it just seems like post-civil rights, people were like, you can't say the N-word out loud, right? You can't be like, Klan, wear robe, put your robe back there. And we'll talk about affirmative action. We'll talk about drug policy. We'll do white supremacist stuff, but we're not going to do it with such like, as in, there are too many, like you have on Fox News, there are too many, like, there are not enough white people in the country anymore. There are too many Black people, and Mexicans are rapists and drug dealers, and they send us their work. I mean, it's to the point where, like, rich kids of the 80s, right? 80s, 90s, 2000s, we had the dog whistles. The racists, they spoke in veiled code. Now it's like,
And what was the hip hop anthem that responded to that very point you just made? Feel of a Black Planet.
So like, I am saying that, and the thing I am saying is, is there a qualitative difference, and does that difference matter?
I don't think so. I really don't. I really don't. I might be wrong, but I think that it's as vibrant as it's ever been. And I think people still do use. I think they're still using dog whistles, but they're just using them more openly, if that makes sense, because it is a dog whistle. But I really don't think it's changed that much. Now I think Trump has emboldened people maybe a little bit more, but I think we're going back to, again, we got to remember what the Nixon era was like.
Mm-hmm.
We got to remember what the Reagan era was like.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think it's very similar to those things. And we got to remember again, I started off by talking about the response to the New Deal and FDR. It's similar. I'm telling you, it's similar.
So you don't think that there'll be open warfare? It won't be a second civil war. It'll be like this Cold War that we've been having back and forth. We don't have to necessarily worry about for a certain point, given COVID and given what they were saying, I'm thinking like, wait, are white people getting ready to kill other white people over this? Right? Like when they stormed the Capitol, they weren't attacking black people. They were attacking other white legislators for the most part, right? Like person they wanted to lynch was the vice president, and he's from Indiana, and
he was their guy.
It's difficult to get whiter than him, right?
Yeah.
Like
he was got white hair.
Right. Like, I mean, when you looked at the former vice president, there's really no part of him that's not really.
He was their guy. In fact, he was the Christian version of that, which made him even more dangerous.
Right.
When he got into the White House.
Right. So I'm just saying, like, is there, like, when I say civil war, I just don't mean them disliking black people, because that's always been, right? Like, that's nothing new. What seemed new is that they're targeting white people. They're targeting conservative white people who are the conservative white people they're targeting are like, we like democracy. Like, with voting, we should, for the most part, do it. We'll gerrymander, we'll cheat, but we're not trying to like have an insurrection, right? Like, there was a violent insurrection that is just, I'm just worried about maybe it might be more. We are running out of this time in this segment, but I just want to give that to you. I want to give that to you, Dr. Harris, to end us off and see.
Well, I hope. Of course, I hope it doesn't wind up in a violent civil war again. I don't think it will at this point. But I will always say and remind people of Ida B. Wells' admonition to Black people. She said a Winchester rifle should have a place of honor in every Black person's home.
Every Black person's home. Yes, she did. Yes, she did. And she carried when she traveled, too. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, yes, Donna?
I know you're about to leave, Dr. Harris, but I know you have to come back soon, and we have to talk about these governors who are, I think one of the things that is surprising me, looking at the different stories that are coming up about governors who are almost sending this COVID money back to the White House, saying that people are not going back to work because the unemployment is too good. Now, to me, that's radical. Here you have
and racist as hell too.
Resources coming in, because what might happen for a group of people may not be happening for all people. So that those are things that are concerning me, that we're starting to hear these, talking about these resources may be too many, and we don't want them because we want people to go back to work because they're sitting home just collecting money. So things like that concern me.
Well, the April jobs report, I've seen the dialogue around the April jobs report wasn't as good as people thought, and they're blaming the stimulus packages, the jobs packages that people have been getting, unemployment people have been getting. They're blaming that. So that's just going to, the April jobs report is just going to fuel some of that fire even more.
Even though most of the stimulus money is going to the major corporations.
All right, and so we are I don't want to start a brand new topic.
I know, but we will talk about that in the next segment too.
You know, Donna gonna ask that big mouth question at the last.
Brand new question with 2 minutes left. Right.
But the only question is, Dr. Harris, what are you listening to these days, sir? What are you listening to? What's playing on your? What music are you listening to? Who's inspiring you, hip hop wise?
Oh, it's always old school. I'm not being inspired by the new hip hop. I'm sorry to say.
Okay.
I'm not being inspired by that. But right now, I'm actually, to be quite honest, I've been inspired by listening to Big Daddy Kane and Cool G rap.
Okay. All right. So you're doing some splits and stuff while you're in your room doing splits and flips and stuff.
I was one of them B-boys that just stood on the side and watched the DJ, stood by the DJ.
Okay.
So thank you so much, Dr. Harris. We always love having you on, man.
Thanks, Dr. Harris.
Because you always break it down for us. So thank you so much, and we'll be calling you back again really soon. Yeah.
You have to give us an update about your conference, so you need to come back and talk about that, sir.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Soon we have our next guest who's coming up. We have Donna. You found like the great guest. Like Donna knows everybody, right?
Everybody.
Donna knows everybody in the state. She knows everybody in other states. She over the summer she goes out of state, finds other people across the country to network with, and
she goes from Kentucky
to more people to do that. So we always love when Donna brings people on from all over, and we really like our guest here. I believe this is the first time you're on, John Harmon. You are the president and CEO of the New Jersey African American Chamber of Commerce, and we are really very, very happy to have you on. Donna, do you want to, because Donna would do a better job at introducing you. Well,
Dr. Harmon, how are you, sir? I think everybody should know John Harmon. Mr. Harmon is, like as you stated, the president and CEO of the African American Chamber of Commerce for the state of New Jersey. The chamber just does tremendous work. The fee that you pay to be a part of this chamber is worth its weight in gold. The information that they send, I get probably an email every day about information that's coming out from the chamber, which is spectacular, whether it's information to help build your business, to help improve your business, and particularly in this last year, how to navigate through COVID information. And I always tell people that they need to be a part of the chamber. So, Mr. Harmon, tell us a little. Go ahead, John.
I'm sorry, you're going to ask him. Finish. I'm not going to interrupt you. You were going to ask him about the chamber. I was
going to say, tell us about the chamber and some of the work you're doing, and then I want to get right into it because and particularly small businesses who have just walked away from applying from COVID relief because they from navigating that process was too challenging for them.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you all for affording me an opportunity to chat with you on this Friday evening. I was upstairs kind of closing out the month of April, trying to get stuff over to our accountants so they can do what they got to do. But delighted to be here. We founded the African American Chamber of New Jersey in 2007 as a resource, as an advocacy organization on behalf of, there's 1.2 million Blacks in New Jersey and north of 80,000 Black businesses, and connecting them to resources and opportunities at the highest level of government, and similarly with corporations. At the end of the day, it's critically important that Black people participate in the state's economy in an equitable way, and that's oftentimes a challenge. And but we, day in and day out, try to fight on behalf of our people to ensure that we are respected, that our relevance is underscored in terms of what we do and what we say. And at the end of the day, Black people build this country, and we have to remind people of that sometime.
Just a clarification in terms of what the Chamber of Commerce is. What is it that, I know you said you want to make sure businesses are respected, but what does that entail?
It entails a lot. So let's say I'm having a conversation with XYZ Corporation, who has a history of not including Black people in their supply chain. On their behalf, we facilitate meetings for them to present their product or service so that they can have an opportunity to show that they are relevant and they have value and they can contribute to the success of XYZ Corporation. So that's one example.
So essentially, you're an advocacy organization for Black business.
In part, yes.
So if I'm a Black business and I call you, like I'm a Black business, I need to reach out to you. Why do I need to reach out to you?
Well, it depends on what you want to accomplish in business, right? So you may reach out to us and say, hey, where are there resources that could help me access capital? So I would say, well, we have a relationship with New Jersey's Economic Development Authority, and right now they have millions of dollars of grants on the street. You may say, hey, I need to have my business, I need to secure a minority certification so I can bid on public contracts. So it could be a whole variety of things. What I'm saying in sum, sir, is that athletes have agents to represent their interests. Corporations have lobbyists to go to before legislators to make their case on their behalf. And so Black businesses, I think it would be wise for them to have an African-American chamber as their strategic partner.
No, thank you. Thank you.
And Mr. Harmon, I just asked a question. I don't know if you heard me when you were in the back room about governors going to sending money back to DC in terms of the unemployment funds that came out in the COVID relief bill, because they said as a result of the unemployment benefits, people are not going back to work. Can you speak to that, and how do you feel about that, sir?
Well, I've heard, well, I can speak about the state of New Jersey. I've heard of overtures about sending money back, but the reality is the money's not going back. And in terms of folks not going back to work because of unemployment benefits, I'm not sure that's actually the case. I have not really heard that from people that I interact with. I got a call today similar to, questions similar to what you're stating. And what I'm hearing from Black businesses is that they want more opportunity to get contracts so they can grow and hire more people. But I have not really heard from individuals within my circle or my network saying that they're not going back to work or they're getting more money from benefits that is more advantageous for them to stay home. At the end of the day, if the money has been sent to a state like New Jersey, I think it's in the state's interest to find a way to utilize that. They have a fiduciary obligation to represent the members of the state, and whether that means providing upgrades for small businesses so they can have point of sale or merchant service systems so they can respond to takeouts if they're in the restaurant business and not, with some of these restrictions, not have indoor dining. If that means having facade improvements or even making grants and or loans to small businesses. If that means providing workforce training so that men and women could better position themselves to compete in the marketplace, or down payment for housing. So I think to send money back to the federal government is irresponsible and not in the interest of the people that they're supposed to represent.
And also, what would you, I have an echo, what would you say to small businesses who are finding it challenging to apply for resources, because of the loss of income during the COVID, because their business had to close down? We have a very prominent bookstore in Newark who, just, trying to navigate through that process. It was challenging. So what would you say to one of those businesses? Should they call you? Can you direct them?
Well, they should definitely call us. I can give you an example. So when the initial round of PPP came out around the country, and I'll again speak about New Jersey, many of our members and Black businesses in general were turned away from the banks that they had money on deposit and or had a relationship over time because no one's really following the law. The bill stated that minorities, women, veterans, and small businesses were supposed to have priority on that money. But nonetheless, banks chose to take the high balance customers and give them priority. And as a result, the initial round of PPP went rather quickly. We then, advocated very strongly to the SBA, and then there was a change. We ended up working very closely with the EDA here in the state to kind of get a little creative because, as you know, the state of New Jersey does not have any set-asides for minorities and women. And that's another conversation we can have today. So from a procurement and incentive perspective, minorities, Black folks didn't have a priority. So the EDA got a little creative. They hired us along with the Hispanic Chamber, and we processed about 800 applicants. And the Hispanic Chamber did a similar number, getting our folks in the pipeline, and many of them got loans. In addition, the New Jersey Economic Development Authority did something rather creative. As they rolled out grant programs, they made the 169 opportunity zones in the state eligible or priorities to get some of those resources in those opportunity zones. If you recall, that was a bill that Senator Booker and Tim Scott stood up. But again, more of our people live in those opportunity zones. And as a result, they were having access to these resources. But I will go one step further and say that you made a reference early on that, every day we're disseminating information to our members and those who are on our database. And so what I'm saying is, if you are in business, I would encourage you to get in line with, either our chamber, or another chamber, or business association, where information is disseminated on a daily basis. And that's the irony. Many of our businesses are missing access to information because they're not on what I would call the grid, where the resources and opportunities and information flow every day.
So what you're saying is that there is a lot of information out there.
A lot.
And that information often, like part of the chambers, what you do is you make sure that that information flows through the Chamber of Commerce, right?
Yes.
So that people are members of the Chambers of Commerce. They can come through you or come through your organization and have access to that information to get them paid.
That's correct. The state of New Jersey has 140 plus chambers of commerce, and we only have one state Black chamber, which I think is enough. But they have within, let's say, mainstream chambers, they have a state chamber, but they have, I said 141, 10s, 20, 50 chambers in communities throughout the state, county chambers, local chambers. They serve a role. They serve a role to connect their constituency or their partners to resources, opportunities, and information. A Chamber of Commerce is an economic vehicle. Booker T. Washington in 1900 established what they call the Negro Business League. And that was all about capitalism and free enterprise. He had 40 chapters between Maryland and Texas. In essence, they were chambers of commerce. But this is the thing. In 1900, he established this organization. He was an advisor to President Taft. President Taft in 1912 founded the U.S. Chamber, which is the largest business organization in the world. So, hey, as I said before, Black people have made this country great. And I would go as far as to say that if Booker T. Washington established his organization in 1900 and he was socializing with President Taft, maybe they exchanged some ideas. Maybe he lifted some intellectual property. So those same people that came out of the Negro Business League went over to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Greenwood and started Black Wall Street. We've been in this game a long time.
You're going to have to back this up, right? You've been talking about this, but you've been dropping things way too casually, right? So I'm going to slow it down a little bit because, like, you dropped some stuff. And I'm going to go back. Let's pick it up. Let's talk about it just a little bit. You're saying the first Black Chamber of Commerce in the United States, the first Chamber of Commerce in the United States was actually founded by Booker T. Washington. He called it the Negro Business League, but it was actually a Chamber of Commerce. And there was no such thing like that existed within the United States before?
To my knowledge, no. The U.S. Chamber was established in 1912. And we've all read Webster's dictionary. Daniel Webster, the land was purchased from Daniel Webster. That's where the U.S. Chamber sits today. It sits across a park, the White House, what separates the White House from the U.S. Chamber is a small little park. They're right. So that's a little known Black history fact. You can look that one up.
And you're saying that a little even more than that. You're saying that what happened right after that was that Black people who were involved with Booker T. Washington and the Negro Business League went on to Tulsa, Oklahoma to help found Black Wall Street?
Absolutely. That's well documented as well. If you do a little research, you will find the connection between many of those folks who were associated with the Negro Business League and those that were in the town of Greenwood, which was right there next to Tulsa. And you know, unfortunately, what happened to those individuals who started their own enterprise, they had banks, they had, you know, the barbershops, they had their own post office, a hotel. I understand some of the houses that they had indoor plumbing, whereas the houses for others did not. So they really understood how to do business with each other. They understood the importance of the dollar, and the dollar was very transformational for those Black people that resided in that town in the 1920s.
Let me just jump in for a second because I want to, and I appreciate the historical layers that Dr. Harmon is presenting, and the mention of Tulsa has to be bookmarked by the fact that this very month is a centennial of the repression, and the attack on Tulsa, right? And it is one of our moving centerpieces of the very warmly developing discussion around reparations, right? And there's one of the things that I'm starting to see in a healthy segment of younger folks. This is something that really showed up with the anniversary of the Million Man March a couple of years ago. There was a renewed interest in the importance of an entrepreneurial self-reliance sensibility that we absolutely need to recultivate, right? Because in the end, we've found out, I don't care how loyal we want to be to either of these parties, the degree to which our needs are met have always been, you know, cut off by the limitations of the racism within those frameworks in the racism in this country. So we've got to be, you know, in Booker's language, in Garvey's language, in the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's language, we got to be ready to do for self.
So, well, I agree with you 1,000%. At the end of the day, you know, the best way to create wealth is through entrepreneurship. One thing about owning your business is that you know when you're going to grow or go out of business versus someone tapping you on the shoulder and giving you a pink slip. it may be difficult to get a business established. I mean, it's easy to get it established, but maybe a little more difficult to get it profitable and really growing and self-sufficient. But once you find your way to get that plane up in the air, it will continue to ascend if you keep some fuel in it. And I encourage folks to, if you have a solid plan and you've tested that business plan and it tells you that it will work, all you need is the faith and the courage and the perseverance to see it through, and chances are it will work.
I was just going to double back just a little bit on when you were talking about the Negro Business League, and you're talking about this Chamber of Commerce is across from the White House.
Yes.
Where's the Negro Business League now? Was that burnt?
So the Negro Business League was interesting. Now I believe they have an operation in Washington. I got to check this because about 2 weeks ago I saw some communication between representatives of the Negro Business League, and I'm affiliated with the National Black Chamber, and we're looking to collaborate to really help each other. And so I'm not exactly sure where their office is located, but I believe they have an office in DC and outside of DC. And I can confirm that. I just got to go back to my email and circle back to you. So this is a recent conversation where my national president and their organization is talking about creating be more strategically aligned so we can provide more value and benefit to our people. So I'm going to try to find that as we speak.
My last historical question, and this actually leads into what Zaid was saying, like my last historical question before we move on to like some of the current stuff, is how much further along would you be, your organization be, the Negro Business League be, if many people who were founding in that didn't have their businesses destroyed or killed or were killed themselves? Is this history like directly, and where you are within this history, directly in line with why we need to have a serious conversation about reparations?
We need to have a serious conversation, but the quick answer to your question, if you think, 1863 was the Emancipation Proclamation, in 1865, Juneteenth, and then 1900, the Negro Business League, and then, 1920, 20s, 21, whatever it was, they rioted and destroyed all those businesses. And then you had, your Jim Crow, your segregation, civil rights acts, and so on and so on and so forth. But nonetheless, we're still standing as a people, right? We've been abused and mistreated at every turn, but we have such a resolve within us that we're very resilient. We bounce back. So in short, we still, notwithstanding all the headwinds, have been able to generate annually like $1.4 trillion annually, which is a significant amount of money. So if you could envision us having what we did in Tulsa, and then replicated that in other parts of the country. Atlanta is a good example. They've had a series of Black mayors, starting with Maynard Jackson, that has been able to create a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of wealth in a very strong business community. Chicago, Illinois, that's the home of Melanie Hobson and John Rogers of Ariel Investments. Loop Capital, which is the major investment mortgage-backed, municipal bond company. They have a great partnership with Magic Johnson. You have some great, very well-capitalized businesses that come out of Chicago. And if you look at the map, many people came right up from Mississippi up Route 55, right into Chicago. That was kind of the line.
Yes.
And so those people coming out of those very depressed areas migrated north, some migrated to the Midwest. But they made a big difference. And if we were able to sustain that, clearly we'd be in a better place.
Now we have a question from Naomi Moody, and she says, for those who want to join the African American Chamber of Commerce but find the cost difficult to pay upfront, are there options to pay monthly? Like we've got a lot of. I mean, that's a great question because we've got a lot of businesses that might need that network.
Well, I'm going to say this: anybody who wants to be a member of the chamber, money is a part of it, but the most important prerequisite is that you're committed to your own success. And so what I mean by that is that you have a plan, you're committed to that plan, you will be engaged with the activity of the chamber actively when things are going down. And so in short, we can figure out how you can pay. I mean, the baseline membership is about $425 a year, right? So most folks may have a Starbucks in the morning. That's, I don't know, $3 a day. So a chamber membership is about $1 and change a day. But you got to figure it out. You got to invest in your vision. But we're willing to work with you. But in short, we'll help you figure that out.
And let me jump in and say this, and I said this at the beginning, sincerely, being a part of the chamber and just attending the different sessions that they have. Oftentimes, we pay for things that probably, if we were part of the chamber, it would be part of our membership, especially giving you tools and resources on how to have access to capital and make sure that the capital that you have, are you doing what's necessary and making sure you're doing the correct things in terms of your business. So sometime we should look at these things first because they're going to open doors for bigger things. So I can say firsthand, I've worked with Mr. Harmon a lot and have been on many sessions, and that, and particularly our small business owners, please make the phone call, and we're going to stroll the website across the bottom and ask the question, because Mr. Harmon is very hands-on, and I can speak for him that between him and Ms. Baptiste, they will make a way to make sure that you have access to the information.
Absolutely. Let me just say this, we love our people. We would go the extra mile for them every day. We have a number of free resources. We got a grant recently from PSC&G, and we've been running for the last 3 weeks what we call master classes to help people understand how to do business with PSC&G, understanding contracts, marketing strategies. We're going to have a QuickBooks session to help folks how they can do better bookkeeping. We have technical assistance that we offer to our members at no additional cost. We have a microloan program where we're working folks, helping them, assisting them with completing an application and getting resources for their business. So at the end of the day, we consider ourselves your partner for success, and would love the opportunity for any man, woman that are in business that want to align with us, because we're committed to doing all we can to help them be successful.
I think that one of the reasons why Donna thought that you would be such an interesting guest, and I want to jump into this, and I know Donna's going to jump into this as well, is we have the COVID relief bill, we have the infrastructure bill, we have trillions of dollars worth of money coming in to the economy. What is going on right now for especially like in New Jersey? We know that if there's an infrastructure bill, we know there's a lot of money that's going to come into the state of New Jersey. We know that there's trillions of dollars that are already coming into to New Jersey from the COVID bill. Is the organization involved in trying to get that money, funnel that money to Black businesses in the state of New Jersey?
So the short answer is yes. I mean, we're in conversations with the governor's office, various agencies within the state. Also, we're working with our other chamber colleagues and business associations, to frame what we think might be the priorities and sharing that with state government. In the city of Trenton, where I live, we send up a few suggestions in this community where we thought the money would be better spent. But the larger question for your audience to take a real close look at, here in the state of New Jersey, when it comes to public contracting, Black businesses are getting 1% of public contracts. Now, we gave 94% of our vote to Governor Murphy.
I need you to back up on it. You said 1%?
1%. That's on a good day.
I knew you was going to put a pin in that. Absolutely. Come on.
1% of all contracts from the state of New Jersey, 1%.
1%. And I want to back that up with a few more pieces, and we can talk about it. This is where the rubber meets the road as it relates to what I call reciprocity. So in other circles, if you use the former president as an example, what does his constituency get for electing him? They got huge tax cuts, and they got over 200, almost 300 judges. 94% of our vote went to Governor Murphy. And trust me, the governor and this administration have worked very closely with our organization, and we've had some success together. But when it comes to public contracting, New Jersey is predominantly a union state, and the unions have not really embraced diversity in an equitable way, where you see men and women that are Black that are working on major contracts or doing or have union businesses that are also working closely. There was a bill that was recently passed and heavily supported by the legislature, but it is counterproductive to helping us get a more equitable piece of the pie. And so that's a real problem here in our state in terms of public contracts.
Name the bill.
Let me say one more thing, and then we can talk about both of them at the same time. The second thing that's pending, there's a bill that was passed by the Senate that speaks about discrimination in auto insurance premiums. So what do you mean by that? That means that if you're low income, they want to see your credit score. They want to know if you are formally educated, and they want to know your occupation. And they use those three proxies to determine your insurance premium here in your state. Now, the bill's been passed by the Senate and has been sitting for months in the Assembly, has not been moved on. This is a situation. So it doesn't matter if you live in Sussex County or if you live in Essex County. If you are low income, if you don't have a college degree, and if you may not have a professional vocation, chances are in your state, you're going to pay more for auto insurance. These are the things that we talk about at the Chamber of Commerce.
He's talking about the FAIR Act. That's something that my little sister Cookie Rivera is always making noise about.
It's just not fair for us in New Jersey. It's just not fair. Although we're voting in big numbers for people somehow we get enamored with because they're nice to us or we took a selfie with. And I'm not trying to take a shot at anybody. All I'm saying is, as Black people, we need to be a little more issue focused. We need to know what the agenda clearly is before we go to the polls and pull someone's, pull a lever for someone. At the end of the day, our ancestors has died for this country. But for Robert Smalls and Booker T. Washington negotiating with Lincoln to put 170,000 Black slaves in his army, who knows? We might be might be all British, right?
Our
All
ancestors
Southern,
won
right?
at war and saved the so-called Union.
So that's my point. So what I'm saying is we have given a lot to this country, so there should be some reciprocity. Similarly, we've given a lot to this administration, and I shouldn't be hoarse tonight about an insurance bill or a project labor agreement. These are documents, these are policies that's going to make the insurance companies rather wealthy, right? They're stockholders. And then the unions are going to get very wealthy at our expense. So we see development coming in this infrastructure. This is why I'm mentioning this. This infrastructure bill is going to put trillions of dollars across America. And a lot of development, your Newark Airport is going to benefit from that. You know, the Gateway Tunnel, if they bring that, they're definitely going to build a tunnel between New Jersey and New York. These are going to be high-paying jobs, big opportunities for businesses, but the prerequisite is you got to be in the union. What I asked for, as it relates to this bill, President Obama put a $25 million exemption on project labor agreements, and I'll explain what that is if you allow me.
Of course.
The $25 million exemption said, listen, you can participate on a public project, but you don't have to be a signatory to the union, but you have to pay prevailing wage. I get that, right? Right now in New Jersey is a $5 million exemption. We were asking Governor Murphy to increase that level anywhere between 5 and 25. I thought that was a reasonable ask.
Right.
They said, no, we're not changing it. It's 5 million and that's it. This is what I'm saying. That's wrong.
So there are these policies that are deliberately underdeveloping, like underdeveloping us, right? Like, so like one question that I have, and this is something that hopefully, like, because normally, you know, like you're progressive, you're for unions, but from what you're saying, if unions are racist, I might as well, you know, hook up with some Republican friends and put some heat on that. Because like, if you're not including black people, I got two lessons for you, F and U. Like,
So,
like you're not including black people in your union, you're making it difficult for that. Like, what? Yep. And I need to care.
That's been the elephant in the room in the American labor movement for a long time.
We don't want to talk about it because the unions are putting so much money in campaigns. It is what it is. So I'm not opposed to unions. I think the trades serve a purpose, but if they're not inclusive for taxpayer money, this is taxpayer money. That's the difference. Now, if you're working for a private company, you got, the union is doing, that's between you and that private company. I get that. But when our tax dollars are funding these projects, so this is taxation without representation,
right on,
which I say is wrong. So I'll be glad to share with Sister Donna, and she can circulate the press release we issued with some information on this policy. I just think it's wrong. So a project labor agreement is, in essence, an agreement between the entity, in this case, the state of New Jersey, that says that the union will make sure that the workforce is available, they won't strike, and we're going to agree to a wage for different levels of work, and we're gonna be good, and we'll get it done.
I'm gonna be even less forgiving, because I'm just like, if there is no, if you're a union and you exclude black people and you are deliberately excluded, you have a history. We know it. We know it so much. People are making exceptions, like, oh, we need to help black people out and help black people some money. We know they're not going to be. We know they're not going to be included in the union, so we're having exemptions. If these unions are that racist, then what's the difference between them and the Klan? And why should I respect that?
Well, I mean, I think to your earlier point, this is the challenge here. We have a two-party system in New Jersey, or in this country, I'm sorry. And we have multiple parties, but the two primary parties are Democrats and Republicans. I'm a Democrat, right? But at the end of the day, sometimes if you are a Democrat or if you're Black and you say, my cousin is a Republican, people start to look at you sideways. So if we don't challenge both parties to compete for our vote, we're going to be played, and that's the challenge. We're over-indexed on one side, and we're not negotiating what's in our interest. That's all I'm saying. As I said, I work with this administration all the time. We've had some success, and we're going to have even more success. But when it comes down to public contracting and the trades, there's not too much wiggle room there. And that's where most of our money is being spent. We need to get a breakthrough there, and Black people need to speak up about it.
And it's not just a breakthrough. They're trillion, like the infrastructure bill that you're talking about, that the infrastructure bill, the COVID relief bill, these things you're talking about right now are trillions of dollars that are to all over the country. And we don't have anything set up to prevent the Klan from excluding us, the Union Klan from excluding us, because I'm going to call them the Union Klan as long as they act like the Union Klan. And I don't know why we shouldn't. I don't know why we shouldn't be like, yo, crack a union, right? Like, why are you acting like that? If you want to, if you're talking about justice and wages and all the other stuff, and you don't include Black people, you should not be respected.
Yeah, it's a real problem here in New Jersey. Real problem.
And some of them probably are members of the Klan, because the Klan has lots of hate groups.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
And if you are saying that you are a union and that you should get priority in this because you are a union, but you do not respect Black people, you should get nothing, man.
Well, to your point, brother Austin, this is a real conversation that we should have, right? In terms of whether they, and I get your point about what these people could be beyond, outside of their affiliations. I hear you loud and clear on that. But I think the point is the information that I'm sharing with you all, it needs to be disseminated so our people could be educated and begin to ask questions. Why aren't we treated equitably on public contracts? Mm-hmm. That's the question. Why aren't we?
Why are we the 1% instead of the 94%? Huh?
Yeah, I mean, so we should be having these conversations with our elected officials. Why is this happening?
And here's the key thing. And here's the key thing that you said, Mr. Harmon, that we need to become more issue-based and not get caught up in superficial things, because if it's whether and oftentimes it's some of us that are union members who don't show up to our union halls until there's a strike and we don't know what's going on. Right. And then there are people in leadership that we didn't show up to vote for that are voting against our interests, and we're paying dues for them to vote against our interests. So it's about being issue-based and being engaged, 100%. Because oftentimes we have seats at the table that we're not even showing up to sit at.
No, I absolutely agree, but I gotta roll up out of here. But if you have another question or two, I'll take it. But at the end of the day, we're relevant, but we marginalize our relevant to Donna's point, but not showing up and being accountable.
I guess the biggest, the biggest ask is, we're going to have two questions, but the first one, if people want to get more information about the New Jersey African American Chambers, what is the first thing they should do?
Yeah, just go to aaccnj.com. There's a lot of information there about who we are, what we represent, the things we've done, things that are important to us. And then there's, membership information. You can find out exactly where you fit in. But I would say to anybody in business, this is an affordable investment because you're going to get a return on your money.
And then the last question before you roll out of here, John is upset. Look at John, he's upset.
I'm mad. I'm big mad.
All right, we're gonna have to have you back.
Love you, brother. What was it? What was the? Donna, was there another question?
Yes, this is and this is a hip hop talk show.
Oh,
so
God.
We always ask all of our guests, and when it comes to hip hop music, what are you listening to? What hip hop artist or group inspires you?
Hey, I was gonna say down goes Frazier on that question. So when you asked the other brother the question, my first reaction was, well, Hezekiah Walker inspires me, but given the recent passing of DMX, definitely been tuned into a lot of what he's been sharing. I think that's a big loss, unfortunately, a tragic loss. But I may not know the artist, but when the beats come on, I come from a Sugar Hill Gang generation and Grandmaster Flash and those types of guys, and a little bit of Biggie here and there. But that's kind of me. I'll still shake my head when I hear it.
Well, okay. Well, thank you. And Mr. Harmon, you do have to come back. And if there's ever something that you think this audience needs to know about, because I hope that you're seeing that some of your demographics are young people, and because you have the ear of many people in the community, but Rutgers students and things like that. If you think you want to come back and talk to the community,
I would love to come
by all
back.
means, let us know. Okay.
I would love to come back. So, Brother Austin, once you read on some of these issues we've talked about, let's have another conversation. But leveraging your network, it could be transformational for us as a people.
No, I thank you. No, I definitely much appreciate that, because I've heard these. Well, we'll let you go. You have to go. We'll let you go. We're getting ready to start the next segment as well, but we're probably going to talk about you a little bit after you leave, or at least the topic.
And John, as you leave, see the question that John Washington put up there for you.
And John Washington, I'm going to be in touch with you soon, because we may need you to talk about when you refer men to the Union Hall, they still remain on the bench. So your response was timely, brother. Keep hope alive.
Wow.
Thank you so much, Mr. Harmon. And you have
I love you all. Have a good one. Happy Mother's Day.
And happy Mother's Day to all the mothers in your life.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good share. Good stuff.
Oh, wow, man.
Good stuff.
You turned red, John.
No, man, I've heard anti-union, like I've listened to Republicans' anti-union arguments. I don't believe them. They're really usually bad. But I have not really understood the extent to which they're talking. Because I asked in the context of the infrastructure bill and a lot of money that's coming in to help people. But if unions are systematically just excluding Black people, that's infuriating, right? Because progressives fought to get massive amounts of money redistributed and put into stuff like the infrastructure bill, COVID relief bill. But if there are certain things that are actually structurally inside of that, that means that very little of that money is going to go to Black people.
Or we have to engage. Nothing is more challenging when you talk to somebody like, yeah, I'm a union member. We're union. Like, I forgot. You pay your dues every month. Yeah. When's the last meeting you've been to? Oh, I haven't. And people pay pretty, a substantial amount of dues, and we have to show up in the union halls, because this is where we vote on leadership, who in turn votes on these things. They vote on where our money goes to that they put in for elected officials and all these things.
But it seems even more. But Donna, is it like we're excluded? What I gathered is that we're actually excluded from the unions. It's not like we're members and don't show up. We can't be members.
Well, and then what he just said to John Washington is, he's saying if we're sending people, and these are for the trade unions down there, and there's a new job coming out, and we're sending people down there to get on that job, and because this union is going to be a part of this development. And so this union has to hire local, and when they hire these people locally, they become a part of that union. But if those people that are coming in to get those those jobs are not being hired for obvious reason, sometimes because of color of their skin. You know, there's a whole training they do sometime with the trade unions on how people are pushed out, you know, whether they're calling you the N-word or things like that. And I know they used to do a training and said, listen, if they're calling you the N-word, but you're making $30 an hour, you just be, you know, you have to navigate through some of these things, and we have to be a little bit more savvy and get engaged. And one of the people we have to get on here who can speak, who can speak to this is our freeholder Wayne Richardson, because he's actually the president of one of the trade unions, the labor union. So we have to have him come on and speak directly to him about it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. He just had him and Tony just had an anniversary too for the wedding. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So absolutely. Like we should have him on to have that very specific conversation, because that was actually that I learned something today, because I actually didn't know the extent to which, and I don't think a lot of people do, because progressives fight for lots of money to be spent in particular economies in particular ways, and Black people are there fighting like, oh yeah, we got this bill that's money's going to go back to us, but there's this rule. Right?
And here's the thing I think we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago about the Donald M. Payne Vocational School and the concern about the lack of minority men at this school. Well, think about that, because these vocations are creating the skill set for these persons to walk into these unions, because they have become, through their vocation, a part of the trade unions. They become electricians, carpenters, and things like that. But if you don't even see persons in the vocational schools, that should give you an indication of who you're going to see as a part of the trade unions as well. So if you're not seeing us in the schools, how are we going to be a part of the school? You know. Okay, you see that John Washington just put that. There you go.
We have a federal law in place called Federal Davis-Bacon Act, but unions are not hiring Black and female workers. All you have to do is take the union to federal court for not following the Federal Davis-Bacon Act.
Enforcement of these legislations.
And you know what that means? That wear people down. They'd be like, take me to court, because they think people are going to be so frustrated that they're not going to take them to court. So yeah, like, take me to court. They'll push the envelope, take me to court.
Yeah, like you said I was mad. It was like bringing up DMX, like I'm about to lose my mind up in here, right? Like, so that's
what I exactly thought of.
Right.
And we got DJ Rhino with us in there. DJ Rhino, did you hear Mr. Harmon brought back the Sugar Hill Gang? He brought back the
very origin.
The origin.
79.
Rappers delight. He said rappers delight.
Yeah, he said a hip hop to the hip hop. You don't stop for rapping. With the bang bang.
Every time somebody brings up that record, somebody it's like they have to say that opening line. Like, you have to say that opening line.
I'm Big Bad Hank. You know that rap. Everybody, and you think, we talked about that on one of your segments, or how long those rappers, their songs used to be like 15 minutes, and now songs are like, oh my gosh, it's like, yeah, saying rappers are light. Sometimes I really get out of breath just trying to say the first stanza, of the first part of it. It's like to take a breath. Like, those are really, really long. I guess you would say bars or whatever.
Yeah, I remember when there was songs that was like 20 minutes long back in the day.
Remember Rhymes?
But remember those were records also that were made for the party. Back then it was about partying and rap music. So, it was about the party. So you're gonna have those long songs where people just gonna dance, keep dancing, and it's not gonna stop. You know what I mean? That, like they say, on to the break of dawn, it don't stop. That's what it was about.
And the storytelling, oh my gosh! I think about Super Rhymes and like
Super Rhymes was crazy long, right? That was crazy long. He went into all kinds of different little stories. Yeah. Rest in peace.
And did they do The freestyling. Could the freestyling be that long back then as well? Wow.
That's the whole thing. That's the whole thing about the rap record. Period. Is that the reason why they were so long? Is that they were trying to replicate what was happening at the parties. You know what I'm saying? Like at the party, somebody would throw on Good Times, Breakdown, or Cheryl Lynn's Got to Be Real Breakdown, or something like that. And you know, the brothers will rap, you know, and the sisters will rap, and they'll get on and they'll rap over the beat. And when you freestyling off the head, you can go on for however long. You know what I mean? And you passing the mic and other people getting on, that's going on forever. And you know, we used to hear these freestyles on tapes. You know, we used to get the tapes, and you hear, you know, Cold Crush or Fantastic Five or Kool Moe Dee, Treacherous Three, and them. You know what I'm saying? You would hear these tapes of people freestyling, and it's just going on because they at a party. It's just going on. There's no, you know, there's no chorus, and there's no songs. You know what I'm saying? There's no chorus and breakdown and none of that. It's people just rapping over the beats. You know what I'm saying? And maybe they'll give the DJ, you know, a moment to show his skills and what he's doing. But that's why the rap records were so long, because they were just trying to replicate what was going on at the party, you know. And it was a struggle. You know, I listened to rappers, and I've seen interviews and stuff, you know, talking about how it was in the early days, and it was a struggle trying to recreate that on a record. You know what I mean? Because that's a live venue, that's a live situation that's going on. You know what I mean? So they used to have people come in to the studio to just, you know, do the you know, just to act like, you know, they're at a party, just so they would have that in the background. And then you would hear the MCs rapping on top of it, so it sounded like a live party. You know what I mean? And for a long time in the beginning, they didn't even have a way of how are they going to have a DJ scratch on the record, on the song. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five went on those records when they're saying Flash 3 times, and then that's not really Flash cutting it in. They just, that was them editing, or the band just playing it that way. You know what I mean? Because there was no way for them to get the DJ on the record, and you know, with the turntable and scratching and all of that. That didn't come up until later. So it was a struggle in the beginning to get hip hop, you know, record, you know, to recreate it on record.
Yeah, we have to get, you know, I listen to, I think DJ Scratch is on BLS sometime, and just to listen to his skill set, DJ Scratch is a phenomenal DJ, and just to listen and his mixes and things like that is just like takes you back to a place of just like, wow. And you just think of that whole skill set of DJing. And I'll never forget, and I think I told you before, I remember I was in the Caribbean, and they had hosted DJ Scratch, and he was doing classes on, you know, like if you brought your kids to a resort, if you will, and they can go in and they can learn a class on how to be a DJ. And it was pretty cool, you know, just to see, you know, to hip hop to evolve in so many different ways, that they were being invited out to resorts that, you know, people on their vacation could have their kids learn how to DJ. So it was phenomenal.
Yeah. DJ Scratch he's like from my generation. He used to DJ for EPMD. That's how he got on. And since then, I mean, when he was DJing for EPMD, he used to do all kinds of crazy tricks and stuff on the, you know, when they were on tour at the stage shows, and he does stuff on his Instagram page now. You can go to his Instagram page and you see all kinds of stuff Scratch does. Scratch is mad skillful. He stays sharp with it. You can tell he stays on it. He reminds me a lot of DJ Rock Raider from the Executioners. Rest in peace, Rock Raider, Grandmaster Rock Raider. Speaking of Grandmaster Flash gave him that title, like officially. He actually passed that title on to DJ Rock Raider. Rock Raider passed a few years back, but yeah, Scratch reminds me of Rock Raider a little bit. But DJ Scratch is.
So we're here this week. So first start by telling us tell us about the T-shirt this week. What's the T-shirt reference?
Nothing really. I mean, this is Celluloid Records. Celluloid Records was a label that Grand Mixer DST, who is now Grand Mixer DXT, from the Bronx, this was his label, and this is the stuff that he was putting stuff out on this record label, Celluloid Record, and he was just in a few of my conversations recently throughout the week. So I just I was in the Grand Mix of DST vibe, and I just had the shirt on, but it wasn't anything significant other than that.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you. So, what's new in hip hop this week?
Yeah, I was getting ready to say
Honestly, I was telling John earlier behind the scenes, like there's not a whole lot going on this week.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first off, I want to say, speaking of the Boogie Down Bronx, I want to say happy born day to Kool Keith from the Magnetic Mcs. It's his born day. Magnetic Mcs was a group of brothers out of the Boogie Down Bronx who came out shortly right after Boogie Down Productions came out. They came out and had a breakthrough album called Critical Breakdown. One of their biggest hits, outbreaking hits, debut hits was Ego Trippin', where they used a breakbeat called Substitution by Melvin Bliss. And that was the first time any of us in my generation heard that breakbeat like that. And these dudes killed it. It became a big, huge hit in like '86. And Magnetic just blew up. They were on some real lyrical, scientific, bugged out kind of hip hop. You know what I mean? But it was fun. It was fun hip hop. It was good hip hop. It was back when hip hop was kind of up tempo. It was fast. You know what I'm saying? And they had a lot of good energy. So big ups to Magnetic MCs from the Boogie Down Bronx, and again, happy born day to Kool Keith. Also, Kool Keith is known because he's done stuff on his own solo career, and he's gone by Dr. Octagon and all kinds of other. He's got a whole slew of different aliases that he's gone under. But he's an interesting guy. He's an interesting brother, man, and we got love for him in hip hop. So big ups to Kool Keith. But one of the biggest things, to me at least, all right, let's just say this. One of the big things going on right now is the Sorry Not Sorry song with Jay-Z and Nas. They did a video. It's actually a DJ Khaled song. It's on his new album, Khaled. It's a song called Sorry Not Sorry with Jay-Z and Nas, and everybody's talking about the verses, whether they like the verses, whether they like the video, this, that, and the other, Me personally, I like where Nas was trying to go, but I wasn't big on his verse that much. I thought the verse could have been stronger. But he mentioned how he was the cryptocurrency Scarface, because he's been getting into that. He's been getting into cryptocurrency recently a lot. So that's one of his hustles now. So I like where he was going with it, but it was just, I wasn't feeling the flow of the verse. And that's something I was talking about earlier to somebody about how verses are, when certain artists get to a certain level, they don't flow like they used to anymore. They might still come with good content as far as what they're saying, but they don't flow anymore. You know what I mean? Jay-Z's verse was a powerful verse, but again, he's kind of talking more than he's flowing. You know what I mean? But it was a decent record for what it was. It was good to see them together. A lot of people are still skeptical about, how real that relationship is between, Jay-Z and Nas. Are they really friends, or is it just, for publicity or whatever it is, so we'll see. But that's been the big talk. I've kind of like just left that alone. It's a new song by Khaled, Jay-Z, Nas, boom. That's respected for what it is. It's hip hop. Boom, boom, boom. Everybody likes to go deeper into it.
Now, is this anything with Demi Lovato's record, Sorry Not Sorry? Is it over her track, or is it totally different?
I'm not sure about that.
Okay, got you. Okay.
And then also, don't forget, Beyonce had a song on the Lemonade album called Sorry Not Sorry. Also, And Jay mentioned B in his verse. I like the way he kind of played on the B's because he was talking about billions and all that kind of stuff too. But also, but the big news that was on me right now, that big news for me was LL linked up with some private investors, and he got himself an $8 million investment for Rock the Bells Radio. So he's now expanding on Rock the Bells Radio, and what he's doing with the Rock the Bells Radio app is that he's adding 3 more channels. I guess maybe it's going to be like sub channels or something like that. I'm not sure how he's going to do it yet, but it's going to have 3 extra channels for Rock the Bells Radio. One is going to be for clean versions. So anybody because right now, you go to Rock the Bells Radio. Rock the Bells Radio is channel 43 on XM Radio.
Woo! You be in the car, you be like, woo!
Yeah, you know, some of those NWA songs come on, you know, easy. But you know,
it's like, that's not how I heard it before.
Yeah, so what he did, one of the new channels is going to be a clean versions channel. So you can hear all of that same music, all of those same songs, but it's just going to be clean versions. So it'd be more family friendly if you got the kids in the car and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Which is a beautiful thing, man. I think that's a beautiful idea.
Now, do you think that makes a difference in terms of just like them bleeping out the words? Because you know what they're saying, right? Like it's not like
I mean, especially radio, especially how radio, like mainstream radio today, the way they edit stuff out. Yeah, it's like you know what they're saying basically, but still for everybody's, you know, constitution, you know, they can at least be a lot more comfortable with the family. Like I said, if you're in the car with the kids, or if you listen to XM radio or wherever, and you got old folks, and you want to put them on some hip hop, you know what I mean? Whatever, you know, it won't have to be too offensive or whatever. You know, you don't have to cringe too much. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, true.
You know what, Rhino? Yeah, there's a TikTok.
Yeah, I was listening to music. My 13-year-old goddaughter was putting on her music. Right? Like, as a matter of fact, it was actually my music because I was like, here's my Apple Music, create a channel, right? So she had a channel she was creating it on, right? And we're listening to music together, and I'm like, oh, we need to go to that different. You know, and it's like, no. Yeah. The only thing I would say is that the one of the worst in that was by somebody who was like Blackanese, and it was like every bad stereotype about Black people and Japanese all in one artist. Like, Blackanese? What? No, we can't play. It's not hip hop. It's not hip hop. No, you're not doing this.
You know, there's a TikTok out now that says when you're playing the clean version of a song, but your toddler knows all of the explicit words that they're bleeping out. So the song is playing and then it bleep, but the toddler is saying all the curse words. It's so funny.
Yeah, because you know they listening to the original versions anyway. You know, but like I said, when y'all together though, when the kids and the old heads are together, it's a little bit. It's more comfortable when you got the clean versions. Sometimes, you know. So it's good to have those options, and that's why I really appreciated that from LL and Rock the Bells. That's a great option to have. Another option that he has, another channel that he has, is the mix down. It's going to be a mix down channel, so you're going to be able to hear mixes and mixtapes and, you know, DJs mixing and stuff like that, not just songs playing on the channel. You're gonna actually hear different DJs doing mixes of different hip hop and stuff like that. So that's gonna be a separate channel also. So that's a good thing, even for myself as a DJ. You know, I was looking at that like that's a great idea too. And then, which is a special one for me too, is he's got a channel for B-sides. You know, when at least back in the days, I don't know how it is now with, you know, people put out singles or anything, but back in the day when you would put out a single, you know, side A was mainly the song that you wanted to get most recognized. Side A was the one that you wanted to get popular recognition. You know what I'm saying? But it was always the B side of the record that was usually the banger. That was usually the hit in the community. That was usually the hit in the streets. That was usually the hit, you know, in the neighborhood and with the folks, you know what I'm saying? And so he's doing he's creating a channel for B-sides. So all of the songs that you heard on B-sides, I mean, all the songs that you heard on singles that were on the B-side of a single, those songs are going to be played on this channel. Those songs are going to be more recognized and more respected. And, you know, you're going to get more shine on those songs, and that's a great thing. There's so many, you know, just loose songs out there that may not be on the album, you know, or whatever, you know, that were great songs. And I'm talking about in hip hop, like in the 80s and 90s, hip hop, those B-sides were serious. So to be able to shine more light on those B-sides is a beautiful thing for hip hop. So again, much respect to LL Cool J and you know that investment, man, and that move right there, man, for Rock the Bells Radio. You know, that's a beautiful thing, man. And,
now, I was gonna say DJ Rhino. LL Cool has been like you was talking about LL. He's been nominated for him and Jay-Z were nominated to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You don't know whether they'll get in, but do we care?
If they get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame,
yeah, I mean, is that
it would be nice. I mean, if they don't, I don't think we'll be scarred or hurt. But if they get it, I think we'll definitely be appreciative of it, because I mean it's recognition. It's you know it's just another level of being recognized, and, you know, for your work. So yeah, that's great. But you know, like I said, you know, just like Grammys and all of these other things, Oscars and all that stuff, you know, when we don't get it, it's like you can't really be surprised now. You got to understand the mechanics of all of this. You got to understand the chemics, you got to understand the chemistry of it all. You know what I mean? Like, it's serious. So I mean, you know, we can't expect you know, to get those things, you know, on a regular, you know, get those kind of accolades from those.
If we get it, it's nice, but don't invest too much in it.
yeah. I mean, if you get it, then that's beautiful, man. Much love. You know, that's just another trophy. That's another whatever. You know, that's another thing. It's another notch on the belt. But that's about it.
You gave me an idea talking about B-sides.
Yeah, man, B-sides, man. Public Enemy, who I always tell y'all on the show, Public Enemy saved my life and all that, you know, got me into conscious music, got me into consciousness, period. And, you know, Public Enemy, my favorite song, and one of the songs that put me on to that, was a song called Rebel Without a Pause. Rebel Without a Pause was a B-side. The song that they were trying to put out, I believe, was You're Gonna Get Your. The song that they were putting out was called "You're Gonna Get Yours," which is about the '98 Oldsmobile, and but that song didn't get a whole lot of.
That's right. That's right.
But the flip side, "Rebel Without a Pause," where he's talking about, you know, Farrakhan and all of this stuff, and Joanne Chesimard, and you know, Sada Shakur. That's right. All of that he was talking about on the B side on "Rebel Without a Pause," and that was the record that put me on, that I lost my mind and gained my mind. I built my mind.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I would say DJ Rhino. I remember when I heard that record, and I think that whole that record changed my life. I stopped what I was doing, because ironically it came on the radio, right? And I was like, "Whoa, what's this on the radio?" I stopped what I was doing. I stood, I listened, and I was like, Who is
that's when radio really listened to the streets.
Yes.
Oh man, you know who I called right after I heard it? Todd Burrows. Me and Todd have been friends since back in like high school, right? Like, so I think I might have been home from school or something like that. But like I was listening, I was like, what's this? I was like, Todd, I just heard this song on the radio. Like, I was like, oh, that's Public Enemy, because of course he knew everything about it, right? Like, they were just breaking it down. I was like, no, like, so when you're saying that song, when you heard it, you were like, I mean, when I heard that song, I was like, I hadn't heard radio like that. I had not heard a song like that spoke to me in that way. And maybe because I was only like 18, right? 17, 18 years old. But I was just like, I got to see what is this? Like,
the one thing I kept saying about it when I heard it was, what is that tea kettle sound? I kept saying, "What is that tea kettle sound? That whistling sound in it?" I was like, "What is that? What is that?" And then just hearing Chuck. You know what it was? It was the grunt by the JBs, James Brown's group, the JB. They had a song called "The Grunt," and that's how the record started with. I guess it was Maceo Parker. That was Maceo Parker's horn.
Wow.
Yeah, he was. It was like a real high pitched sound.
And on
that part, it sounded, and it sounded like a tea kettle the way it came in.
Yeah.
And they just sampled it and repeated it, and it just sounded crazy. And then you hear Chuck D's voice on top of that, and then all of this 808 in the back of it, and then you hear James Brown and Clyde Stubblefield's funky drummer playing, and it was just madness, man. And then they would have these breakdowns with this go-go piece from, I believe it was Trouble Funk. It was crazy, man. It was madness. They started the whole thing off with Jesse Jackson talking about brothers and sisters. I don't know what this world is coming to.
Right.
Like, you don't understand. This was madness for me, man. It was bananas. Like you said, John, everything stopped.
Right.
Everything stopped. The world stopped that night when I heard that. Chuck Chill Out was the one that played it. And
scroll back. Let me give you the origins, though. Let me give you the origins of that. The origins of that is Soul Power 74.
Yeah.
Yeah, like what you said in terms of the sonics, right? Because I think it was a combination of the lyrics and the sonics, right? Like the sound, you were like, "Whoa, what's this sound? This is cool." And then when they started speaking, you're like, "Damn!" Right? It's like you had to stop everything you were doing and pay attention, and then figure it out afterwards. I had never experienced music like that. I had never experienced music.
Zaid, check this out. Now, I know you said the power, Soul Power 74. I know about that one, but I think this one, the brothers and sisters. Do you remember Watt Stacks?
Yes.
And you remember the band? Remember the band Soul Children?
So, yes.
All right. So that's where,
yes.
brothers and sisters. I don't know what this world is coming to. Then he said the Soul Children, and then they came on out.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, that was the Watt Stacks. Yeah, and that was what was that?
In the 70s. Yeah.
What year was Watt Stacks? You remember?
Yeah, 76, I think. Either 76 or 77.
Okay, but yeah, man,
and Jesse was there in the Jack Kiki, and he addressed the concert.
Yep.
That's where that came from.
Remember Isaac Hayes came out with the chains.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was the signature stuff back then. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man. Richard Pryor was in it. It was nuts. Man. That was nuts. But that's all good stuff. All right, so one last thing.
DJ Rhino, I didn't know that song hit you the same way. I know you were talking about PE, but when you mentioned that, I was like, that song struck me the exact same way. You just couldn't do anything else.
Changed my life, man. Changed my life. Because I wanted to know who Joanne Chesimard was. I wanted to know more about Farrakhan. I just wanted to, just needed to know, man. I needed to know. You know what I'm saying? And I was seeking it out. And that point on, I was seeking it out.
And with me, it was like a little different because I knew who Sada Shakur was, right? Like I was like, oh, but I was like, I never heard this on the radio.
Right. Yeah,
right.
Right.
Like, I knew right. I was like, yo, it was like suckers radio, like radio never. But I was hearing it from the radio, and I'm like, yo, are they playing you right now when they're doing a good job? I think you know this whole radio. Are they going to shut this whole thing down? Because this is, I hadn't heard music like that. And I definitely hadn't heard it on the radio, right? And the fact that something was coming to me on the radio like that, and I'm like, whoa, like I thought I'm reading these books, and I think I'm out here, right? Yeah. And this radio, I'm like, yo, how's radio playing this? Nice.
So think about it. Think about it. A 16, 17-year-old kid who wasn't doing a whole lot of book reading at that time. From that point, that's where the book reading began for me. I was picking up, like I said, I picked up Black Panthers and I picked up autobiography of Malcolm X. Yeah. And then from there, I learned about Assata Shakur and I learned about Farrakhan and Nation of Islam and all kinds of things, man. Started getting into Eldridge Cleaver and everybody, man. It was bananas, man. I just went on my own search for all of this knowledge, man. And I had my brothers with me, man. All my friends, my best friends. We was all book heads, man. We used to go book searching like every weekend, and it was just crazy, man.
And that's
what
what
set it flowing.
Yeah, man.
So in essence, it caused you to go back and do some research because you didn't know what they were talking about in some aspect. So it caused you to go out and seek what they were talking about. So that's a great thing.
But here's the thing that I thought was even what was as interesting and on those lines is that poetry has like culturally throughout like centuries been used to further discussion and conversation, right? So like when I started looking at this in retrospect, I thought the power of what was going on right then is because hip hop was about words and poetry, and we started talking about lyrics in the same way for centuries, for millennia, right? For millennia, we talk about poetry that moves further, that focuses the debate within cultures, right? And that is exactly what hip hop was doing then. And it was almost like I've never been a fan of I've never been a fan of NWA, and I've never been a fan of most of West Coast hip hop because I always thought like they were like.
You always felt like they were behind us.
I always thought that they were undermining, right? They were behind, like white people funded them to undermine nation conscious rap, so our conversations would be different, right? Like our conversations when it was PE, our conversations were about reading, right? People reading my autobiography of Malcolm X. They're reading stuff from the Nation. They're reading about what went on with Asada, right? Like PE spurred a certain type of dialogue afterwards that NWA didn't, and they got one off with F the Police, which felt like real, but I mean, I never get into everything that they were doing because I was like, yo, are they feeding me this so I don't think about this other stuff?
Yeah.
Because they didn't get in any trouble when they were talking about killing black people, when they were talking about like, you know, all sorts of things that they talked about, right? They only got in trouble when they were like, F the police. And that's when people came on them and I'm like, there's a reason for that, right? Yep. All the other stuff is free for consumption. Everybody who talks about murdering black people, it is not controversial unless it's Dolores C. Tucker. Rest in peace, right? Who was right. I mean, in retrospect, right? We got to get Alan Gordon on here. Once he wrote an essay. Alan Gordon wrote he was an editor of XXL. He did a lot of stuff in the College Independent Review, and he wrote an essay like I don't know, recently, but a long time ago, right? Maybe 10 years ago, but like, well after the controversy, that like C. Dolores Tucker was right when talking about like why she was against certain types of music she was against, and why she was like this form of hip hop is genocidal, right? Like as in,
I want to say she may have been right as far as her views on the situation, right? But how she handled it, I don't think she was right. I don't think she handled it correctly. Like you can't handle your youth. You can't handle the youth the way she was trying to handle it. I mean, she was, to me, in my opinion, she was trying to go a little too hard, too heavy-handed with it, man. Like the way she was going about it. But I do, especially now in my older years, I do understand her views. I understand where she was coming from. You know what I'm saying? Just like we was talking about earlier with the, the clean versions and all that. Like, I understand where she was coming from. But you gotta handle things a certain way when you're dealing with your kids. You gotta handle things a certain way. And I still don't really agree with how she handled it. Rest in peace to her, but I don't agree with how she handled it.
It was like rhetorical. It was rhetorical corporal punishment. It was a little disrespect, and I get it, right? Because that was the generational gap, right? There was good stuff coming, but it was actually a generational gap where I thought that the Nation of Islam started handling it a little differently, right? Like when talking about and criticizing certain things in the music, I think you got to have you have to have that level of connection.
Right. Troy Desmond Smith also said, I remember where I was when I heard Rebel Without a Cause. It was transformational, great conversation. He filled you on this. So obviously for the hip hop head, without a pause, right. But obviously for the hip hop heads, this is a song that it's always interesting to talk to and particularly to young men, especially young men our age, asking them about the Million Man March and when did they go, and if they went, how did did you leave different than when you came? And to hear different stories. I remember Derek Green, that actually Pastor Derek Green that works with Governor Phil Murphy. I'll never forget. He said that he left the Million Man March, got on the bus, and called his wife, now his girlfriend, then, and asked her to marry him. So a lot of I heard a lot of significant stories about people that came to the Million Man March, and then when they were leaving that day, how it really impacted their lives.
Well, I believe me and Troy Smith went to the Million Man March together, right? Like Troy Smith I've known him like most of my life. He was a legend. He was a debate legend when I was a freshman in high school. He had graduated a year before I graduated, and everybody talked about Troy Smith as being like incredible debater and stuff like that. And he taught me and Todd Burrows at Seton Hall Upward Bound. So me and Todd Burrows kind of met and became friends and bonded under the direction of Troy Smith.
What is he doing now? Bring him on the show.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You got to bring Troy on the show so we can, and we should talk about the Million Man March, because I always like to hear different reflections. And where you go? Y'all went that day, and how was it for you that day you went, Jonathan?
Did you go? Amazing. It was amazing, right? Like it was one of those things. And Todd, I think me, Todd, and Troy went to the march together. But I think I remember it that way. It's been a long time. So Troy, if I'm messing that up, let me know, right? But I think all of us, we took the train down, and it was wild because it was like all the brothers were brothers, right? And it's like we went, sat down, we ate with people we didn't know. It was like it was. I have never been to Mecca. I am not Muslim. I have a lot of respect, but it was in my imagination, it was the closest thing to feeling mass universal brotherhood, right? Mm-hmm. Like you had like black men everywhere, and everybody was your brother. You like you could step on someone's shoes and be like, "Yo, my bad." Everybody give a hug, right? Like it was the most loving event that I think I've ever been to, because you had a bunch of brothers and some sisters, because you can't have all these brothers without sisters coming, right? Like the Million Man March, a lot of sisters around too, but you could not have I have not been to a more actually loving, uplifting environment where people you didn't know from all across the country were like, I got your back. We got your back. It was a wonderful experience. It was an experience that single-handedly in one day denied everything they've said about us for 400 years, right? Mm-hmm. Like that was after, I think it was after OJ, it was after the LA riots, it was after all this disrespect of black people in that time. And it was just like, oh damn, this is this is all of us, right?
I remember. Did you go, Rhino? Rhino, did you go?
It's muted.
Can't hear you. Can't hear you. Yeah.
The Million Man March you're talking about?
Yes.
No, yeah. I didn't make it. I always hate to tell the story that I missed my ride.
You missed your ride? Oh wow. Yeah, and okay. You did. Yeah, because I followed it the whole time.
Yeah, because remember the young, well, he's a grown man now, but remember the young man that spoke?
Yeah. I still have the audio of that on tape, because I think I put it on audio also. I have the audio.
The young man? Yeah. His name was Baptiste too, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's I think he's a nephew of Haki Matabuti.
Yeah, what did Troy say? Yes, I remember us being down in the gap. I remember we were in a restaurant and brother gave me his utensils.
Yeah, and it was just so cool because we're all crowded up, right? There were a lot of people. And it was like, yo, man,
take my fork.
Yeah, man. Right. It was all good, right? It was just one of those things where it was just like, everybody was helping in every way they could. We were looking for ways to help other black men, help other black people right then. Like you could find a way to do something positive, we were doing it.
And here's the thing, especially because I remember in the first segment, we were talking about January 6th. And again, when all of these black men were going to convene on the Capitol, how many police were there to meet y'all?
It wasn't remember. Okay. I don't remember. I think everyone went home, right? Like Congress was like, we're gone. Like there were, I don't remember anyone but black people, right? Okay. It was black people in the FOI. I mean, who were black people, right? Like since the Nation of Islam was doing this, we didn't really need the police.
Capitol still shut down that day.
Right. Like, but they all shut down. They went home. They were like, we're gone. Let's go catch a flight, right? Like, it's time for me to meet my constituents, right? Like, you got a million black people, you got a million black men marching on the Capitol. Nobody wanted to be there, including the police. So no, I don't think that. In my memory, I don't remember any police that being there. I don't remember any police officers. I remember the FOI being there, right? I remember the Nation of Islam was all over. But I do not remember. Maybe it's my memory. Maybe it's just a fantasy, right? But I don't remember a million black men. I don't remember one police officer. Okay. The entire thing. I don't remember him standing on the corners. I don't remember a police officer being around. My memory could be bad. Mm-hmm. I only when I go back 30 years, all I see is like black people, right? Okay. So there probably a lot of people undercover, right? There probably were a lot of people undercover, but I don't really remember. It was from me, my memory. It was the police were definitely plain clothes, right? There was no military police gear going that day.
They were in a retreat position, but they were there.
Yeah.
And they probably had the black ones out there too. Yeah, right. The black cops out there in plain clothes.
Right. Mm-hmm. They probably had a lot of black plain clothes policemen there. That's why I'm saying it wasn't like we were met with military force, even though we knew we were being surveilled, right? Like we knew,
Yeah, because I remember the perception and to come home and it was such a peaceful day, and I remember talking about that. And probably one of my favorite movies to this day is Get on the Bus. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's get on the bus. Ed, you went to Million Man March?
Of course.
Okay. You didn't miss your ride? I'm Rhino.
Wow.
I like Rhino.
I was a driver, so of course I didn't.
No, okay. Everybody would. Rhino, but did you really miss your ride that day, Rhino? Yeah. We can't hear you. He's steady talking.
I'm trying to.
Yeah, I did.
He's steady talking.
I was steady trying. I was trying to hook up a ride with my man Black 45. You know, it's supposed to be a bunch of us up in his SUV heading out, man. But yeah, the time didn't permit properly for a few of us. A couple. Right. Yeah.
So it was a big
I was tuned in the entire time though.
Did you go to because it was on TV? It was. Did you go to any of the ones after that?
No, I haven't gone to the other one.
Yeah, to the 25th because I know I went to the 25th and it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm one of those people, man. If you're not there at the first one,
inception,
main one. Even I'm like that even with concerts. Like I don't want to see P-Funk now. I want to see them when they were in their prime. You know what I mean? I don't want to see. You know what I mean? I like to see people when they were in their prime. I don't want to see them when they get older. I want to see when it's a redo or a remake. So that's kind of how it was for me. I mean, I still support it. I always supported everything. But yeah, I didn't go to the other ones.
Yeah, I think a lot of us was in front of our TV.
Consciously didn't go to the other ones, but again, that first one, I was trying.
Mm-hmm. But we were able to watch it on TV, so I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely.
You know what's interesting is that John, you know who went with me, right?
Was that Bashir, right?
It was Bashir and it was Alan Gordon.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right. Remember, you were driving down because we knew each other back then. You were driving down, and me, Todd, and Troy took the train down.
Right.
And my sister, I think my sister was with me.
Oh, okay.
Because you know, my sister had to be there, so Annette was there.
Wow. Wow. It was only a handful of females that were there, though. You know? But it was an awesome day. I think that, you know, when I got back, I think that for most people we were all in the fall because nobody could really believe what had just happened. You know what I mean? And if you saw them the way they were raising money, it blew your mind how they were passing those bags all the way from the back all the way up to the front, right? It was a spiritual awakening. And I don't think there's ever been a coming together of black men since then.
No, not. Well, I mean, there've been more Million Man marches, but
right.
that was kind of like our Woodstock, right? And to Troy's question, he's saying, what do you think happened as the outgrowth of what happened? For me, like I think that the only really thing that I saw afterwards that was capturing it was because I think that really the aftergrowth was all individual. I don't think it was collective except for Women for the Million Man March. I think the woman I know, or the Women for the Million Man March in Newark, I think that they did an incredible job with that legacy, right?
Yeah, women in support of the Million Man March. That's Sister Frederica and all of them. Yes.
Right. I think women incredible. Yes, I think Women in Support of the Million Man March did an incredible job with just some real, I think they implemented from the Million Man March better than anyone else I know or seen, right? But I think for the rest of us, I think it was like we tried to be better at what we did, right? I thought it was like, for me, it was very spiritual, right? Like it was like, and I think that because there were no real organizations that were built after it, there were no movements that came after it. It was really like a generation of people had an experience that affected us for the rest of our lives.
But let me ask you a question, John. Why do you think that a real serious organization didn't come about after that? Why do you think that was?
Because it wasn't made for that, right? Like I think that ultimately, Farrakhan's a religious leader, right? Like that when we listened to what he said and the other speakers who were there, it was about personal growth and transformation, right? Like we all gave money there. We don't know what happened to it. We don't really care, right? Because we gave whatever, whatever happened. It was positive, whatever, right? But it wasn't a matter of and different people might have had different experiences from that. But I didn't really I kept doing the things that I was doing that I thought were really positive. And I kept organizing where whether I think we were doing College Entertainment Review at that time. And I was doing my debate coach, and I'm like, I'm going to be the best one that I potentially can be. I'm a network, do all the things I need to do to help these kids in particular ways. I think it made us better at being who we were.
I think that the thing I think happened is that nobody really expected for that many black men to show up. And I think that caught everybody by surprise. That they were shocked by that.
Yeah,
and that's what I was going to fully organize in the way that they should have. I think that's what happened.
Yeah, I was going to say if nothing came out of Million Man March, we definitely got to see that it is possible that 1 million plus black men could come together in peace.
Yeah,
solidarity. You know what I'm saying? It showed that. It showed and proved that to us. It showed and proved that to the world. If nothing else, it definitely showed that because it was 1 million plus of black men there, and it was no incidents. It was no nothing. You know what I mean? It was peace and love to the time.
But that's why I say that even being there, it was the performative embodiment of a repudiation of everything that had been said about us, because there was such a spirit of love when you were there, right? So it was personally gratifying and transformational, but it was also we suffer so much under just the glare of white supremacy, and that this is who you are, and you really didn't fully recognize it until you were there. Just how intense. Right, just how intense that constant drumbeat of as you are a black male, you are an animal, right? Like you have the expectations we have of you, or the expectations that you are an animal. You don't really get fully what that was or how you were living with that psychically until you were in that atmosphere that just pushed that off based on your just that love, right? Because it was love that you had for other brothers from all over. You did not know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But listen, y'all know that, of course, Congressman is joined. Y'all know that, of course, if it is the first Friday, y'all know it is time for the Payne report. So we want to welcome Congressman Payne to the show. Welcome, Congressman.
Hey, what's happening?
Hey, Congressman Payne.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Good. Did you go to the Million Man March, sir?
No, actually, I wasn't there. So it was like 999,999.
We didn't quite get to the million because Congressman Payne wasn't there.
That's right. No, I actually, my father was there. I'm
Yes, I was
not
gonna say your dad go. Yeah. So some Congress.
Not-
No, he wasn't Congressman, was he?
No, yeah, he was.
He was in Congressman.
Yeah, that was what year now?
95.
95.
Or was he in New
Yeah, he was in it. He was in it.
Okay.
He went in in 89.
Okay. So yeah. So he was there. Jonathan.
He was there.
He said no Congressman people were there. Jonathan,
No,
Congressman
he was there.
Payne was there.
Yeah, I got to find the picture. So I'll find the picture so I can justify it. So what's up? What's going on? What's happening? How's everybody?
How are you? How are you?
Hey, I'm representing Payne Tech tonight.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Oh, that's a nice hat. That's Payne Tech. We like that.
Yes.
Okay, that's a
Yeah.
nice logo hat. Yeah.
It is a nice hat.
Yeah, they sent the superintendent sent it to me.
Okay.
Got the lions on the back.
Okay.
You know, representing, yo.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they have a nice superintendent. I had a pleasure to meet him. We donated some. They have a cosmetology program, and we donated some hair to them so they can work in the cosmetology program. Very nice superintendent.
Yeah. Well, you know, I guess let me get right into it because I'm really excited. You know, I decided maybe you know, y'all are kind of, you know, get tired of talking to me, so I figured I'd start bringing some people on so we could have some good conversations. And you know, I do a lot of work around health issues that impact minorities. And the other thing is, not only do I do work for people in our community, I basically have everything that we're trying to fight. So, you know, if it's diabetes, hypertension, congenital heart failure, on dialysis, need a kidney, I got it all. So, you know, I am, I tell people I'm the most infirm member of Congress there is. I mean, I got everything. But, you know, with that, it has led me to try to do something for my community and other people. And I'm only one man, so I need partners. And I was blessed. I was blessed to find a brother who came on Capitol Hill and was talking about what I was just starting to think about because, you know, even right now, I have a diabetic ulcer on my right big toe that's trying to heal. So, you know, I have been a candidate for amputations a couple times, but I've always been fortunate that my doctors are very good. And, you know, I haven't had to go through that. I know people, one of my colleagues in Congress, her husband just lost some toes. And the woman that's next to me in dialysis that has become my friend just lost her toes and half her foot. So, you know, it's right around me, but, you know, thank God, you know, I have the health care I do. But my fight is, for me, is to have everybody have the same health care I have. You know, I shouldn't be special. This should be what everyone gets. So that's my fight in Congress, and that's what I continue to do. But I have a brother who was immigrated to the States as a young man, got his education at Rutgers University, and then went on to try to do something in this area. He's a doctor, cardiovascular surgeon. He does a lot of work around peripheral artery disease, which is, the veins get clogged in your legs, and your circulation gets bad, and that's how you end up with amputations. Well, I noticed that there are a lot of people in this country that have amputations, and a lot of them are unnecessary. And this brother came in my office with one of his patients that had lost her leg and said that this is not right. And I was like, thank you, God, because I just started thinking about it. I hadn't done anything really about it. I was looking because I was a patient, and, I got close to that happening to me. So I started to look at it. And, this brother came in, and he's just been an incredible, incredible partner. Started out, working in Camden around artery disease, and stopped and looked and said, if I really want to be about this, if I really want to do it, that brother picked up all of his stuff and left his family here in Jersey and moved to Mississippi, right in the heart of where this issue is, and reduced amputations in his hospital, his area, by 70% based on the work that he's done. This is an incredible brother. His accolades are far and wide. And, he's the co-chair of the Association of Black Cardiologists. He's been a brother that's helped me. And let me stop talking about him. Let me have him talk to you. And that is my good brother, Feluso A. Faccaretti.
Good evening, everybody. Congressman Payne Jr., good evening, sir. How are you doing?
I'm good, man.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, my camera and where I am, the lighting is not great. So I apologize that I don't have an avatar that is appealing to your audience, but we're here to speak truth to power. So hopefully the voice will suffice. Thank you for the privilege of invitation, and nice meeting y'all.
Yeah.
And nice meeting you as well.
I think we had him on. This is the second time
we're on the show.
Yes. Okay. Yes, sir.
welcome
Yes, sir.
back
I
to
wasn't.
Payne
I wasn't sure if it was the same group. So we spoke about our mission, and we spoke about music at the end. So it's nice to be comfortable in this circle. And I just want to number one thank Congressman Payne Jr. for just being the humble giant that he is. Because I'll tell you right now, we have an epidemic on our hands, and there are only a few people that will use the power of their pulpit in terms of, both their advocacy and personal plight to advocate on behalf of those who lack that megaphone, lack that voice. And he's done that for people who suffer from a condition known as peripheral arterial disease, PAD. Some people use the acronym PAD. This is one of the most chronic, deadly, costly, and disabling diseases that I don't know if most people have never heard of. Your audience, your family members have never heard the term. However, I bet you that 3 out of 5 of us have a family member that has had either a threatening limb amputation, diabetes, or undergone an amputation. And that could be a toe, that could be below the knee, that could be a finger. And when you suffer from certain risk factors, that leads to the buildup of what I call plaque and cholesterol, and leads to the narrowing of the blood vessel. And when that happens in the heart, it causes a heart attack. And you all have heard about heart attacks before. If that happens in your neck, that can cause a stroke. Well, if that happens in your legs, that can cause poor circulation, called peripheral arterial disease. And if you suffer for a long time from peripheral arterial disease, you don't have good oxygen-rich blood circulation going down to your foot. Therefore, it starts turning color. You start getting symptoms, pain, numbness, tingling, burning. Your legs give out when you walk. They start getting darker. You got wounds and non-healing ulcers. And then when you go see a doctor, most of them offer you an amputation as the first strategy. And out of the 200,000 amputations that occur yearly, the rate of amputations in the Black population is 3 to 4 times. There's something called amputation lottery, meaning that what would determine if any of us here tonight will get an amputation. And here's the following. 1, if you are Black, Latinx, Latino, Hispanic, or Native American, but more so in the African American population, 3 to 4 times likely. The second is if you live in the South, or if I call the Black census scope of America. And if anyone who doesn't know that what that map looks like, just look at the maps of where states that had the highest percentage of slaves during the Civil War. And you all know what those states are. And then you look at your insurance status. If you're uninsured, underinsured, or if you have Medicaid or Medicare, you're more likely to get amputated than someone who has commercial insurance. And then if you have some of these risk factors like diabetes, chronic kidney disease, meaning your kidneys are not right, which usually diabetes causes, high blood pressure. Those 3 risk factors right there, predominantly African Americans carry those risk factors at a rate of 2 to 3 times higher than any other of their counterparts. And if you smoke, or if you dip, or if you chew tobacco products, that too can cause the narrowing of blood vessels. So those are, and then lastly is your hospitals. What type of hospital specialists are available to treat the condition when it gets to the extreme state? So the availability of specialty care. And this is something that I found that was lacking basically in a lot of rural areas, predominantly African American communities. And so I looked at the amputation lottery of the map of America, and I decided that Mississippians are 40% African Americans. That's the largest of any other state. And the epicenter of amputations was actually in the heart of Mississippi, in the Delta. 30 miles from where Emmett Till was killed, and 8 miles north of Mount Bayou, where my practice is. So that is just, there's a lot of generational impact this has had, because it's not just something that's new. This has been going on for decades. And the healthcare system has failed our people. The healthcare system has turned a blind eye to this topic. Even when Martin Luther King said in 1966 that of all forms of inequality, injustice in healthcare is the most shocking and inhuman, at least in early death. He said that in Chicago in March of 1966, and nothing has changed since then. We've had technology, we've tried drones, we can use drones to do everything. We have technology and all these devices that are studied that can heal people. We have medicines that have come out that all these industries tout. And I presume most of you are familiar with New Jersey. New Jersey is a big pharmaceutical hub, Minnesota is as well. But none of these medicines are studied in our people. If you look at all the trials to date in the heart and vascular space, meaning that all the cardiovascular trials to date, less than 5% have included African Americans. And of course, everyone throws back, well, Tuskegee. Well, no, it actually preceded Tuskegee. If you look at the initial, go back to slavery, African American women where gynecological procedures were performed on them without anesthesia. That was the founding father of gynecology who did that. He was an AMA president, American Medical Association president. So, I mean, it's a matter of intelligence and this peculiar indifference people have towards especially race and the health of Black people in this country. And that indifference is what we're trying to tackle. And people like Congressman Payne have been at the forefront to help establish, policy. I believe that, we can try and do as much as we can as doctors. We can try and have this whole battle with what I call the good old boys club that have dominated all facets of healthcare, the industry, from medicines to societies that run the policies. It's all dominated by a group that doesn't reflect the community that's being affected. And so when we talk about policy, it's not necessarily to change people's hearts, but it's to restrain the heartless, people who are just chopping off limbs and legs without giving someone a limb preserving option. When we know that 90% of these limbs can be saved, 90%, and we're just chopping them off. So that's what we're here to talk about tonight, and to thank Congressman Payne for his legacy action recently in the implementation of policy that will help, hopefully, not only educate more Americans about this issue, but help us screen these patients early on, because their death rates is worse than some cancers. Y'all have heard of breast cancer, prostate cancer, colon cancer. PAD is worse in terms of its death rate than all those cancers I just mentioned. The only cancers that are worse than it are lung cancer and pancreatic cancer. So we need to take it as seriously as cancer, screen for it, and try and discourage and disincentivize these doctors and surgeons who are chopping off limbs, who therefore kill these patients off, because 80% of them will be dead in 5 years of an amputation. And I'll stop right there and ask and get more questions.
So Doc, let me ask you a question. So it seemed to be one of the major factors in preventing this seems to be the screening.
Yes, sir.
Is there a particular age? Because as you know, one of the things that have been said as it relates to cancer is that African Americans should be screened a lot earlier than previously suggested for African Americans. So if screening is really one of the major preventions in preventing PAD, what age would you suggest African Americans be screened?
That's an excellent question. So we have guidelines. Cardiologists have guidelines that have been implemented where we say anyone over the age of 50 who either has a history of high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes or pre-diabetes, anyone who's had kidney disease, anyone who's had heart disease, meaning you've had a heart event or stroke, anyone who uses nicotine products, any of those qualify to be screened for PAD. But here's what a lot of people actually don't realize is that in 1984, Congress founded an entity called the U.S. Preventative Service Task Force. That is the task force that is, basically is the guiding light for a lot of our primary care doctors, and who basically we see in clinic. And if you fit a certain demographic or certain age group, or if you have a family history, you get screened for certain diseases, cancer being one of them, right? Breast cancer, colon cancer, you name it. But the U.S. Preventive Service Task Force for decades have failed and turned an eye on PAD. And basically what they've noted is that they looked at the general population and not just specific population that we vascular specialists want to and consider high risk for PAD or amputations. And I just listed what those patients are, majority of whom are minorities. So the U.S. Preventive Service Task Force wrote that the prevalence of PAD is disproportionately higher among racial and ethnic minorities and low socioeconomic populations, but they discourage testing. That they know that their statement of discouraging testing in this patient population will perpetuate disparities, not only in treatment but in outcomes. And these are well-established disparities in care. However, the evidence of screening and treatment in these groups, meaning our groups, is currently lacking, and therefore they are very hesitant about giving a screening recommendation that CMS will cover, meaning that the Center of Medicaid and Medicare, which will incentivize these primary care docs to screen not only people who fit that demographic based on those risk factors, but also will help catch this disease early on so they don't show up when they have a wound ulcer. So they failed to screen and recommend screening for these at-risk patients. And that's why we went to Congress to see if they could help us bypass this hurdle, because it's failing a lot of people. And it's costing our healthcare system about $23 billion a year. Majority of these patients make about $35,000 to $40,000 a year. And the cost of PAD, once you get, and if you get amputated, can cost you and your family member about $150,000 a year. So most of these patients cannot afford that care and end up dead.
And Doc, thank you for being on the show again. This is Donna, and you said they will end up dead, and they end up dead because they can't keep up with the maintenance after they are amputated. Why, after the
Right.
amputation?
Yeah, that's a great question, Donna. So think of your kitchen sink pipe. If your kitchen sink pipe is clogged up and you call a plumber to come and unclog that kitchen sink pipe, and he or she pours Drano down the drain and it's not working, well, you and I know what they need to do next. They need to get like a roto-rooter, right? And clean out that plaque, right?
Right.
Well, that whole process is not just happening in your legs. It's happening in your heart. It's happening in your brain, right? So there's what we call a co-prevalence of this disease state happening. So you chopping off someone's leg at whatever level it is, you have not addressed the problem. That's a band-aid you just put on a bleeding, a gushing wound. Because
Right.
upstream, you still have blockages. And those blockages are not only above where you amputated, but it's all occurring in other organs as well. So eventually they die from heart attacks, strokes, and not only that, they die from depression because 80% of them suffer from depression, 95% have chronic pain. The cost of taking care of these patients in terms of affording not only prosthesis that Medicaid sometimes does not cover, but they have to they retrofit their homes, their cars. They have to pay medical bills
Right.
because they have to have their amputation site revised, and infections can come in. So there's a lot of comorbidities they suffer subsequently, and ultimately 80% will die within 5 years.
Right.
So
That's the fact I wanted to come out. After the amputation, the average lifespan of these people is 5 years. And a lot of it has to do with the depression that they go through. I mean, just sit there for a minute, close your eyes and then open them, and then act like your right leg isn't there. Somebody's got to help you get up. Somebody's got to help you get dressed. You need help for the rest of your life. And so that is a negative impact on the family because someone's going to have to do it. My uncle lost his leg. My mother's brother, he lost his leg, and I used to have to take him to dialysis. He lived on the second floor. Every week I would have to wrestle with his wheelchair coming down from the second floor. And, eventually I kind of hurt my back from doing it. And so then he felt guilty. I mean, it really plays a psychological, has a psychological impact on you. And, Dr. Facaretti is doing incredible work down there in Cleveland, Mississippi. I had the great fortune of visiting him down there and seeing his operation and what he's done. Opened a beautiful medical center down there in Mississippi, something that they're not used to having, that nice and that style. And he's got his operating rooms and the rooms for the patients, and is just doing a phenomenal job. He's very, very modest, but this man is changing lives in an entire area in this nation. And, I'm just delighted that we found each other because he's doing what I'm doing. This legislation that I'm working on really is coming out of his head and a few other people. And all I'm doing is articulating it to my colleagues, and it makes sense. A lot of those Southern members see these people and know these people. So, we're pushing forward, and we're gaining some momentum. We've been at this a few years now, and we finally have a bill that's been accepted to go out. And, we're just really excited about the prospects of that bill becoming law. But I mean, you're talking to a man right here that is dedicated to saving people's lives. I mean, if they don't have the money for the operation, he's worked out deals with the companies because some of this equipment expires. It has a life expectancy. So it can't be used after a certain time. So Doc asked the company, rather than taking it back and throwing it out,
can they donate it for someone that doesn't have the money? And a lot of times, Doc, they do agree with you.
Correct.
And then he performs this surgery at a minimal cost for these people that couldn't afford or don't have the insurance for the normal operation and what have you, because of their financial situation. And so he's just, I mean, he's doing God's work, man. He's doing God's work. I say that all the time.
And a couple more questions. What part of Mississippi are you in, Doc?
Yes, ma'am. I'm in Cleveland, Mississippi. Cleveland, Mississippi, Bolivar County. So that's 2 hours south of Memphis and 2 hours northwest of Jackson. So right in the heart, right in the middle, right. So the Mississippi is the poorest state in the country, as y'all know, and our folks. So if you look at the population, 3 million people in Mississippi, 500,000 of whom are uninsured. 1 in 3 of those uninsured are Black. And so these patients don't have access to affordability for their blood pressure medicines, diabetes medicines, their kidney medicines. Some of them are Medicaid. When you're on Medicaid, you're restricted to just 6 drugs that are covered, and everything outside of that, right, is you have to pay out of pocket. So they can't. But what we're failing, here's our healthcare system here. We rather pay for an amputation that costs more to not only to our healthcare system, which 80% of that bill is paid by all taxpayers, by the way, 80% of it. But we rather than screen these patients upstream, catch that diabetes, treat it early, catch that blood pressure, let's treat it early, catch that high cholesterol, let's treat it early. Let's have, community engagement with these folks so they can engender the trust of these communities, so they can facilitate care-seeking behavior, so they can come to you and tell you what their social determinants are. Some of this is transportation. They don't have transportation.
Right.
They got to drive 2 hours to see a cardiologist or a diabetes specialist. Mississippi is the only state in the diabetes belt of America. There are 15 states in what we call the diabetes belt. Mississippi is the only state where all counties are represented. And guess how many diabetes specialists we have in that whole entire state? 7. 0 are in the Delta.
Diabetes belt.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. So it's called the diabetes belt. Yes, sir. So we have the highest prevalence of diabetes, particularly in the Black community, and we have 0 endocrinologists. And I trained in the Upper East Side. I was in New York at Cornell. Up there, in every other block, there's an endocrinologist. So that's where, I talk about we got to go into the history of the country. When you look at how the wealth gap, right? And you can look at Hempstead Act, you can look at whatever it is from generations, and how that built up the wealth of one race over another, and how that led to the education achievement gap. And that led to now our neighborhood and redlining and how that affected things, so housing, and how you can look at, the community context and how implicit biases exists in medicine, where, your race determines if you get a limb preserving procedure versus an amputation. And then let's look at access to healthcare, not just access to healthcare, but access to quality healthcare, as Congressman Payne Jr. said. The difference between him and a patient in the Delta is that he will go in to his doctor and they'll give him quality care because they know not to mess with this man, right? Now, someone in the Delta will walk into that room and without even touching the patient, a doctor just writes on a prescription, let's chop off that leg.
Yeah.
Let's send him to a specialist who can save that leg, or let's see what happened to your diabetes. Let's send you to a specialist who can better manage your diabetes so this doesn't happen again. But they just chop off the leg, ignore the fact that it's a death sentence. That hourglass on their lifespan has been turned as soon as you apply the blade, and that is something that has gone on for decades.
And Doc, I know one of the things in like diabetes, high blood pressure, those are things that we can actually affect if we change our eating and things like that. So when a person come and sees you and perhaps they're on, the road to perhaps getting an amputation, can changing their diet, are they at the part if they change their diet that things can regress?
Yes, ma'am. The number one preventable cause of death in the world is your lifestyle and your dietary changes, right? That's the number one preventable cause of death. So what you eat, and we tell people that, It's not avoiding everything. We always say avoid everything, but we're human beings. No one's perfect, it's to try and avoid salt and sugar in the course of a day. I mean, you really have to, it's a Herculean effort, and depends on your, not only if you live in a food desert, like in the Delta, where you're not going to get access to good quality foods and you're just seeing, one food chain after another, that's not healthy. But also it's having the literacy level. That's why education comes to play. Health literacy is a big deal. Like when someone walks into my office, these are people who are in the 4th grade level in terms of their achievement. So when I sit and I talk to them, I don't use big words. You got to look at them and say, okay, listen, we got to cut down that sweet tea. You got to show them a graphic as to what plaque buildup would do, and show them graphic pictures versus healthy pictures. And you got to go and meet them where they are. Sometimes don't even bring them to your office. Go to their churches, go to their community centers, talk to their family members. Shared decision making is something that has to happen, and you have to involve their family members. But at the same token, if you look at the history, even in spite of all those efforts that you and I just spoke about in terms of lifestyle, diet, the study just came out this month in the Journal of American College of Cardiology, the biggest heart journal. It looked at the delivery of healthcare for the last 20 years and compared rural versus urban care in the Black community. And may I submit to you that there has been zero improvement in the healthcare of rural Black Americans over the past 20 years. So their life expectancy hasn't changed. I mean, this is what's so shocking. Life expectancy hasn't changed. Their heart failure rates haven't changed. High blood pressure management hasn't changed. Diabetes improvement hasn't changed. 20 years. And you know what's funny about all those things I just mentioned? Those are all the risk factors for heart attacks, amputations, dialysis. So it's, why hasn't it changed? That's the question we should be asking. We have all these doctors without borders. We spend a lot of money on our healthcare system, but where is it really going? And what's going on in our communities? Well, there's only 5% of people in the medical field that look like me right now. 5%. So what's our pipeline looking like too in healthcare? Who are the people who are running all these universities and medical schools? And who are the people running all these institutes of research? They don't look like us. So we have a lot of work to do on the front end, on the back end, on the policy front, on the educational front. But more importantly, we need to make sure that this war, this epidemic, awareness is number one. That's what we need, and that's why I'm here today, right? Is to speak about it so people understand that this is real. This is not a one-off. It cannot happen to me. 1 in 3 adults in America will be a diabetic by the year 2050. 1 in 3. And if you're over 50, that's gonna, PAD is gonna be in your future. So screening for this thing is very important, and that's why Congressman Payne has implemented an Amputation Reduction and Compassion Act that not only will screen these patients that I said are at risk, but at no cost sharing. I mean, these patients should not be paying for it if they live in poor areas.
Right. And Doc, all great information, and I really use that analogy when I talk to people. When I went to the doctor and he saw the ulcer on my foot, I was supposed to go on a congressional trip to Panama, but I had this little thing on my toe, and I said, you know what? I better not go out of the country without looking at it. And I had it for a month or so. I just didn't do anything about it. And I went to the doctor and he looked at it and he says, oh, we've got to clean it out. That's an infection, and you're going to have to do it tomorrow. So I stayed, and they opened my foot up and debrided it, cleaned it out, and it didn't heal. And they were worried about the toes and what have you. And that doctor looked at me and said, we're going to do everything we can to save your foot.
Amen.
Fast forward to a brother that comes in the university hospital on a Saturday night, and it's full of people in there, and the toe has been bothering him, but he doesn't have insurance until, and this probably happens down in the Delta all the time. They're working, they're looking at the toe and it hurts, but they don't have insurance, so they just keep working and dealing with it. And then when it turns colors, then they get worried and go to the doctor, and by that time, it's got to come off. So, I'm fighting for the right for everyone to have that doctor say, we're going to do everything to save your foot, rather than looking at him, black guy, on a Saturday night, sizing him up and says, your foot's got to come off. And he goes on to the next patient.
Yep.
That's what I'm fighting for. And Doc, tell them about the issue around people gaming the system by doing toe by toe and then half the foot.
Yeah.
And tell them about that payment.
Yeah.
There are people down in certain areas that this is their monetary resource. This is their revenue stream, cutting people's feet off.
Right.
Doc, tell them how they do it piece by piece.
Yeah. They're now.
Congressman, so wait a second. You saying people? Are we talking about doctors?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So the imagine if a patient walks in and they come in and they have a non-healing wound or ulcer on their foot, so it's on their big toe, for instance. So with the way your anatomy of your leg is, there's a big pipe that comes all the way to the level of your knee, just one single large bore pipe, and then it splits into 3 vessels on your knee. And so sometimes one of the vessels can be clogged up, 2 of those vessels can be clogged, 3 of them can be clogged. And depending on the technical competence of the doctor, the training, we can go in using different techniques and open all of them up, or one of them up, or 2 of them, to restore that circulation to that area. And you need a good wound care doctor to give it about 6 to 8 weeks to heal. But the game that some people will say is, once they see a non-healing wound or ulcer, they take advantage of all the patient's health literacy level, or socioeconomic status, or the fact that they don't know what's happening, and they'll say, okay, listen, we ought to take off this toe, and knowing that nothing has been done to improve that circulation, you and I know that toe is not going to heal. So in about 2 weeks, they're going to come back for a follow-up visit, and the second toe doesn't heal. So guess what they got to do? They got to take that out too. I actually have a picture that this happened this past week. Every week I see a patient like this. They've taken out 4 toes in this individual. I have a picture. And after the 4 toes, what they do is they now come in and they'll say, well, because they get reversed every time. They'll take out 1 toe, 2nd toe, 3rd toe, and then they'll come and say, oh, we got to take the 4-foot out. So the middle of your foot, it's called a transmetatarsal amputation. And then lastly, they'll do above or below the knee amputation. So those are like 4 big procedures that they've done on an individual. And that's on one leg. And this disease acts like twins. If you have poor circulation on one leg, you got it on the other. So they'll come back again at some point in 6 months, and they'll do the same thing on the other leg. So it's the most criminal. I mean, it's just sad. It's sad to watch, and it's unacceptable in medicine. This happens if you look at the amputation rates disproportionately occurring in the Black community. This is happening at a rate that, and in some areas, if you're a diabetic, 28 times above the national average. In spite of the fact that you can do a procedure that decreases your odds of an amputation by 90%. And that's shooting that down the legs and going in with a needle and a balloon and opening up that vessel and giving it time to heal. The analogy I use is a woman walks into a clinic and says, I have a mass in your breast. You don't just say, well, listen, let me just do a mastectomy. You have to do a breast biopsy, ultrasound, there's tissue, give it time. There are things that you can do to help someone. The same thing should apply to your leg and your feet.
So basically, they know that it really should be an amputation to the under the knee. But what they do is they pick off a toe at a time, and they keep billing Medicaid.
They're getting paid.
So they're gaming, right? They're gaming the system. They know it needs to come off at the bottom of the knee based on the circumstance. But what they do is they go toe by toe, and they send the bill.
That's genocidal.
You said it. That is.
But But according
So
to the doctor, though, he's saying that and correct me if I'm wrong, Doc. You said that they actually could have went in and put some sort of balloon
yeah,
in there, and they could have cleaned it out
yes, sir.
and put the circulation
So
back, and
fundamentally
it wouldn't have needed to be
yes.
to be cut off one toe at a time, or even cut off at all.
That's absolutely right. So that's what led me to Mississippi. You know, I got trained here. I did my training in my medicine training was in New York, Presbyterian Hospital in Cornell, but my cardiology and limb salvage work and training was done at Cooper in Camden, Cooper Hospital. And I went down to Mississippi because they don't have a limb preserving specialist. All they have are surgeons, and all those surgeons were chopping off legs, all the back and forth. So I started my own practice, so they don't muzzle me, right? Because that's what they try and do. If you go under their system, they're you know, they run the hospital system. So I started my practice and opened up my own area where, you know, I can perform procedures and second opinions. So I go out to community to tell them that, hey, if anyone tells you need an amputation, come see me first. And so that's what I started doing. And we decreased amputation rates by about 80%. And then I started writing op-eds, and then I became a co-chair of the Association of Black Cardiology. And then we got a call from Congressman Payne's office to come and testify one day. And I brought a patient of mine who lost both her feet, the most eloquent person you'll see, someone who loved to dance, beautiful woman. And unfortunately, Congressman Payne, she died at year 5. She got her leg amputated 5 years ago, and she died November last year. So it's something that is preventable. That's why I said it's the most chronic.
Yeah.
It affects 21 million people get PAD every year. We have 200,000 amputations. 130,000 of those 200,000 are diabetics. And African Americans carry the largest cardiovascular burden, not only for this decade, but for the next 2 to 3 decades. So it's our people who are losing their limbs. And it happens here. I just referred a lady from Morristown to get her leg saved. So they come from all over to try and get their leg saved.
Now, Doc, her name was Miss Campbell, right?
Gertrude Campbell, yes, sir.
Yep. See, I remember her name. That woman was so beautiful and eloquent. Sitting there, she had her one leg, and she told me her whole story and how she met Dr. Faccaretti, but met him too late. Because didn't you have a friend of hers that you were able to save her leg?
You know, it's funny you mentioned that. Yeah, so her friend, they were best friends, grew up together. I saved her friend's leg, but her friend had a stroke. You know, remember what I told you all, that this thing happens in your neck and your heart and can happen in your leg.
Right.
Her husband worked in the VA in Virginia. She was a wife, and he committed 43 years of service. She had a stroke, but no one checked her circulation in her legs. So I checked it, and she was wheelchair bound. Everyone said, oh, she had a stroke, and we opened it up, and she started walking. But unfortunately, when you have a stroke, it's debilitating. I'm sorry to break the news to you, Congressman Payne, but she died 3 months ago as well. Yeah, so this is
Dr.
Yes, ma'am.
Doctor, we have a question. One of our listeners want to know, do you have a colleague in this area that if people wanted to see you, but they're in this area, you know, do you have a colleague that you work with in this area?
Yeah, so what I do is when people have if they're from all over the country, there are certain people who have the skills that I do that I trust, that I'll send my mother to, right? So that's the most important question. Who do I trust? And so I would ask them to contact me. My handle is padadvocate@gmail.com.
Say that again.
padadvocate. So padadvocate@gmail.com.
Okay, so just email you and then okay.
Or you know, Instagram is PAD Advocate is my handle on Twitter or Instagram. So PAD Advocate, yeah, they can just and I'll get them in touch with my team. And what we do is that we reach out to our colleagues that we know all over the country that we trust, and then we tell them that, you know, they need to take care of that patient and get them. But for the most part, is, you know, patients, we have to take control, especially in the Black community. We have to we have to be awakened by what's going on, and take ownership and make sure that if we have any family member that is offered an amputation, we got to ask questions. No more yes sir, yes ma'am. The white coat is noble, but we need to know that this has been a generational scar, and the fact that we have tools and technical competent doctors that can save limbs and lives, and amputation first strategy should no longer be the case in 2021.
Right. That's Civil War. That's Civil War medicine.
Yes, sir.
Right.
What we're doing is Civil War medicine.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense. It makes no sense.
Not in the 21st century. No, sir, it doesn't. Can I ask a different question?
Yes, sir.
That's this, and this is I'm bringing it back to the pandemic, right?
Yes.
Because I have not heard it discussed in terms of how it particularly plays out in our community. One of the frightening after effects of COVID-19, so I'm hearing, is that some 50% of COVID survivors find themselves facing residual heart disease.
Yes, sir.
What would you say to that, and what that means for our particular community? Several of us are survivors right here on this show.
Yeah, I am a survivor. I actually I was in ICU with COVID. Funny enough, as a healthy 39-year-old with no risk factors, I ended up in the ICU for 6 nights with COVID. But that's because I'm a healthcare worker, and there's
exposed.
It depends, right? Yes, sir. But what happened with COVID, and we're still learning about the disease state, is that it affects different organs and it targets different receptors. These receptors are found on the heart, in the kidney, on the brain. You get where I'm going with this? So these are risk factors that we've carried, especially in our generation, our folks. And why did a lot of Black people die from COVID-19? Well, it's not just because the disease, it's not a genetic construct. There's a lot of it's a social construct that it took advantage of, created by men and women. Social determinants of health is the answer. And so this disease affected and just exacerbated and blinded high blood pressure receptors that we see, and heart disease, and the formation of clots in your arteries and veins, especially in your veins. We started to see that, and people did lose their limbs at a rate higher because during the pandemic, people with diabetes did not get access to quality care. Telehealth is not a solution when internet bandwidth is not available to 60% of your patients in rural America. Right. So guess what? They were stuck. They were stuck at no one to help them. And so a lot of them really, did poorly in terms of heart attacks, strokes, amputation rates, and ended up with their kidney function getting worse and ended up dying. It's a tragedy.
It is. And that's one of the things that we're doing with respect to the reauthorization of the transportation reauthorization and infrastructure bill. We're adding broadband as a infrastructure issue, and the Republicans are pushing back. But we feel that water infrastructure and broadband are part of the revitalization of infrastructure in this country, because it makes no sense that kids, in some areas have to go to the closest McDonald's or near the library and do their homework, outside in the parking lot of McDonald's.
Yeah.
Because if they're not buying anything, they can't sit in there. So they're sitting in the parking lot doing their homework. And we have to get more kids, the computers in order to even need the Wi-Fi. So we've got some really major problems that we need to address. But, Doc is doing incredible work. I mean, are there more doctors that are, coming to create a network like yours to stop amputations?
Well, that's the problem. The recruitment and retention of a doctor to rural America is challenging. And, I don't know if y'all know why, but it's because we don't incentivize it in our healthcare system. So someone like myself who went and sold my car and what have you to start practice and did a lot of things that, banks wouldn't give me a loan when I got there. And y'all know why that happened. It's not my credit score was the issue. It was because I was an outsider. I was a Yankee, quote unquote, that came down south and, they wanted to know what I was doing there. But you muddle through those things and you gain, an understanding of how the strengths and the weaknesses, if I may add, of the community you're in, and you focus on the strengths, and you build a coalition. So retention, people, it's hard for people to bypass, like a doctor coming out of training at Robert Johnson, for instance. If I wanted to recruit that person to Mississippi, I have to do that on my own dollar. Now, if I were a primary care doctor coming through a hospital system, the government will help the hospital recruit that doctor. So there's funding for those doctors, but there's no funding for specialists. So we have what I call specialty deserts. If you think about all the risk factors I told you, kidney disease, dialysis doctors, heart doctors, vascular specialists, infectious disease doctors, podiatry doctors. So those are doctors who treat the foot. These doctors live in bigger cities, bigger centers. Not a lot of them come to the epicenter, like the heart of, like, let me go to rural America where I have to drive 2 hours to get a Starbucks coffee. It's hard. Some of them just cannot do that. So it's we need to address that.
And the doctor had to really fight. Once again, he's being modest, but he really had to fight to even be accepted down there. People were apprehensive. The black community was apprehensive about him, and the white community tried to run him out of there. I mean, they reported him to the state medical board that's saying he was doing stuff illegal. I mean, not only
that I was doing illegal work, I was
fighting this
doing
pandemic.
illegal work.
He's fighting this pandemic of amputations, and then he's got to fight with the white community that doesn't want him there. And the black community that's a little apprehensive about, this guy from up north. First, he's from up north, and then he's black. Oh my God, that's two strikes. But he is, his perseverance and his stick-to-itiveness is something that I just, I can't tell you. I just respect him so much with what he's had to go through in order to save people's lives. He's saving people's lives. And they're giving him a hard time about being there.
Yeah, and my response to that, Congressman Payne, is that it's as much as we've had to, and that's why I'm glad that I'm in the heart of where the civil rights movement, basically was galvanized, and where momentum after Emmett Till's death, Emmett Till did not expose Emmett's body to the whole world to see. That injustice no one would have seen the atrocity that was committed to that poor kid. Not only that, we had people from all over the country now come to Mississippi to try and fight, and they came to Money, Mississippi. So what we've done, what you and I have done, is that we're exposing this injustice, and all it'll take is one or two people to realize that this ain't right. The surgeons are fighting back on it. They don't want to hear this. I'll tell you right now, they get very uncomfortable hearing this conversation because we're exposing a secret that has been long standing, and then they'll try and flip it and say, well, we're causing more harm by screening patients. No, we've lost a lot of black lives, and we're sick and tired of being sick and tired. That's my response.
And these are essentially white doctors who are doing this. Congressman, we know that you're integral on the infrastructure bill. And that you talked briefly before about it dealing with human beings, and it kind of changes what infrastructure is. Is there something in that? Like, I know you talked before about trying to do something with the infrastructure bill that would help deal with this. Is there something that can bring doctors or have money for the certain types of doctors to come to, like, rural Mississippi and other places where and black communities all over the United States, really, right? Like, so where we have these problems, is there something there that finds infrastructure that way?
Not that I know of, but that's something that I can explore, and there might be opportunities to incentivize people that do that. Maybe, wipe out their college debt or something that, if they decide to do like 5 or 6 years, in a disadvantaged area. But we're reshaping what infrastructure is. We have in this bill we've added housing as infrastructure. So we're going to be fighting the housing issue in this country through infrastructure. So we have broadened the definition of what infrastructure is, and the Republicans continue to push back. But we're pushing forward. But that's something I might be able to look at with respect to incentivizing doctors have done what Dr. Faccaretti has done, and make it worthwhile for them to do that. Just one other point about Dr. Faccaretti and talking about where Emmett Till was killed. He said, "Come on, we're going to take a ride." And we rode out in Mississippi, and we're going out, and there's cotton and big fields, and we're just driving. And this brother pulls up to this little white store, and we get out, and he goes, "Congressman, look at that sign." And that was the store that Emmett Till had gone in, and they said he whistled at the girl. So anytime that Doc gets down and thinks like he wants to give up, he drives to Money, Mississippi, and looks at that and says, "No, I'm doing the right thing, and I'm going back at it." So it's really deep.
Standing on the shoulders of the ancestors. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And I thank him for doing that, because I never would have seen that if he had not done that. And it really just kind of makes me emotional. But this brother, anytime he gets down or discouraged, he drives to Money, Mississippi. And he's revitalized.
Congressman, I always say this, and I said this last time he was on. This information that this brother has, it has got to go far and wide in our community, and we've got to do a lot more to get this brother heard on every absolute program that we can get him on. Because this
brother's on NBC, he's in magazines, he's like flying. He's not even home. Where are you tonight, bro?
No, I'm in Jersey today. It's Mother's Day week. I can see mom, but usually I'm far wide. But one thing I think to Mr. Austin's point is the recruitment and retention of doctors, not just doctors, but you want doctors that reflect the communities that they're about to go to, because you have to understand, for me to be able to come up here and talk to y'all, you have to be comfortable walking into any church, any Black community or Black forum, and have that conversation. It's not taught in medical schools how to have this conversation, one. And two, there's not a lot of us in medical schools. So the pipelines of medical schools also have to be infiltrated in terms of what are they doing to make sure that STEM programs and programs in sciences and technology and education, like what are we doing to enrich those programs? And two, on the back end, what are diabetes specialists? We can go reduce diabetes rates by a certain percentage, high blood pressure specialists, do something by certain percentage, decrease the dialysis rates, incentivize that. And I think that eventually that's going to be the way, because if you don't incentivize the recruitment and retention of docs, they're just going to go, period. This is not an altruistic mission that most people will take on. Like, they're not. It's not. It's not in their wheelhouse. And two, most of these doctors don't look like us. So they'll rather be comfortable in wherever they are right now, and that's just the facts.
So it seems like what you're saying, and what seems to make sense, is that every community should have a pipeline to the local medical school from people so that people who look like them in their community can come back into these communities, right?
Absolutely.
like whether it be Rutgers Medical School, whether it be like whatever community you're in, closest medical school there, and especially if it's a public medical school, should recruit from your communities. Make sure that starting in like 6th, 7th grade, like we're going to have a certain number of doctors every year.
Absolutely. You know, you took the word, and we spoke about this to the Rutgers community last. You know, I'm a part of Rutgers. I'm proud of Rutgers. I know, and Seton Hall actually is not involved in this program. So that has to be something that we do a better job, and we talk to the Congressional Black Caucus about the need for this. You know, we talk to different pipelines, you know, BET, like, you know, we talk about different things on our networks, but we need to start talking about healthcare, not just currency, because healthcare, it should be a metric that we use to gauge the success and the generational impact that would have for decades to come. Is something that we can't put a number on in terms of the economic impact. So there's clinical benefit, there's economical, but more importantly, the human benefit. And the purpose is just, and it's for the right cause. So I don't see it's a win-win for everybody.
And this recruit from our community for military, right? Like in all of our communities that are affected by this, the military has programs to deliberately recruit kids for the military and has for years. Like after my first semester of college, I get a call from a recruiter saying, "How'd you like college?" Because if I didn't do well in college, he was going to recruit me. Like it was real, and that was from like early high school all the way through. So if they do, we know they know how to recruit from our community for high-level jobs that can kill people in the military. Why not for doctors?
Amen.
Well, Doc, Doc, we know that you're out there doing God's work, and our prayer is that you continue to expand and meet other doctors like you so that you can replicate you in every state in the U.S. And I know, and if you're in Jersey, Congressman Payne, we would love to get him into some of the schools in your district. I know Oakwood Avenue. I can remember we did a career day at Oakwood Avenue. And one of the cardiologists who went through the UMDNJ program, he actually looked at the students and said, when I was coming through medical school, there were so many doctors that looked like me, and I don't see that anymore. So to that point, if you can come back and start talking in the 5th and 6th grade, because as I understand, that's a good place to catch our young students at the 5th and 6th grade to kind of as they prepare to go forward. So when you're back in Jersey, let us know. We will walk you over to some schools and get you to talk to our babies.
Amen. And y'all have my contact. Even if we can't, you know, the beauty of virtual now is that, you know, we can do that. But, you know, as things open up, I'm more than happy to participate. I do that in Mississippi a lot. I talk to middle schools and high schools. I'm very involved in my community, especially in the whole Mississippi Delta. And I'm actually coming back to talk at Cooper in about 2 weeks. I'm giving the ground rounds about this topic to the Department of Medicine. So I'm more than happy to come back. Jersey's home. I'm a Jersey kid. So,
and you know, I did want to ask you at the top, what, you know, because you said that people notice things way down the lines. What are some of the, you know, immediate things that people should pay attention to that should cause them to pay attention to so that they won't get way down the line?
Yeah, so number one is take off your socks and look at your feet if you have any of what I call the risk factors for peripheral arterial disease. If you are diabetic or pre-diabetic, if you have a history of high blood pressure, high cholesterol, if you've had a heart event or stroke, if you use nicotine products, if you have a family history or someone who's had an amputation, then, and if you're over the age of 50, those are the risk factors. The second thing is that once you take off your socks, you look at your skin color, your tone. Is it dark? Is 1 foot darker than the other? Is your hair loss in men? Hair loss, you're not getting the hair growth that you should. The toenails are looking, you know, you're not looking right. They're getting yellow, they're getting thicker. And then you're getting wounds or ulcers underneath your feet. If you walk and your feet feels funny and it hurts and you have pain, numbness, tingling going down your feet, those are signs that you might be having poor circulation. And so a doctor has to check pulses. You need to take off your socks and check your pulses. And if they don't, find a doctor who knows how to check your pulses. Seek a second opinion. Let them do an ultrasound of your legs. Let them do, basically a measurement of the circulation of your feet. And then let them tell you what that result is. Let them start your medicines to try and help you heal. Let exercise. Watch your salt intake. Watch your sugar intake. For diabetics, keep your A1C less than 7. If you have diabetes, see a podiatrist or foot doctor once a year. When they cut your toenails, be careful, because sometimes they'll clip your nails and they'll cut it off, and the wound is not healing. Well, maybe because you had poor circulation, and that wound now is going to turn into a big amputation if that circulation deficiency is not taken care of. And keep your blood pressure at a certain level. Make sure that you're trying to exercise 150 minutes a week. Those are kind of things that I tell patients, and we try to eat in moderation and follow a good diet. Those are the basic things that I'll set to our community. Right.
Yeah, what we're trying to do is we're trying to normalize the routines that Dr. Faccaretti follows. Just like when a woman goes in for a mammogram, there are certain things that the doctor just checks automatically. So we want to try to normalize the routine checking of the feet, so they can determine if screening is necessary. Well, screening it and checking the feet to see if it's necessary to do any other actions with the leg. But it has to become a routine with the doctors. And that's the problem right now. It's not part of their normal routine. They weren't taught to check that. And so now they don't. But so we're trying to normalize the things that Dr. Faccaretti does so we can prevent a lot of this before it gets out of hand.
Well, thank you.
So Doc, we appreciate you coming through. Of course,
this is loaded. This was absolutely loaded.
Yeah, we we actually blown away. We were blown away the first time you came. We even more blown away the second time. And you need to come back often. That's all I can say. I just think you need to come back often. We need to broaden the conversation, and I think that, we really need to have you talking to some of the seniors who are getting this bad information, right? Some of these people who are going in and the doctors are giving them this bad information. And of course, Congressman Payne is only one brother, but I mean, what a hell of a job. I mean, just to be able to find somebody like you who has this kind of information. So we need to have you back often, Congressman Payne. We thank you for getting this brother back on the air with us, and appreciate all. I've got a tremendous amount of notes. We're out of time, but I've got a lot of notes that you got to come back, and we've got to delve into some of this stuff, man.
Listen, all I can say is God sent him to me in DC with Miss Campbell, and we've been growing together ever since. And I just really appreciate the day that he walked in my office, because it changed a lot of things, and we're trying to change this thing that I want to stem the tide of unnecessary amputations in our people and in this country. And that's one of my missions. So I'm at it, and I got a good partner in Dr. Faccaretti.
Yes, you do. You have a damn good partner.
Well, Doc, we appreciate you. We're going to give you the last word.
We got to give you the question before we give you the last word.
Well, go ahead, Donna.
All right, Doc, we got to know. This is a hip-hop talk show, political talk show. So we need to know, what hip-hop artist and or group are you listening to currently? Doc, you there? Are you thinking? Did we lose him? We lost him?
We may have lost him.
And John, you're muted. John, you're muted.
Yeah, he's there, but not there. So we might have lost him in a bad connection.
Oh,
but this is the second time he's been here. So
okay.
Oh, wow. Okay.
All right. So Congressman, you got to ask him and get back to us with that answer.
Definitely.
Congressman, we had John Harmon on earlier. Wish you could have been here with him. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we were talking about the infrastructure bill.
Yeah, I did something last week where he was a part of. I gave some opening remarks at this engineering firm that is trying to do a lot of minority recruitment, and I've been working with them and have kind of called them on the carpet about what they're doing. So now, they invited me to be the guest speaker. So John was there as well. I think he spoke after me, but yeah, I'm sorry I missed him. This
he got
this,
John Austin upset. Woo.
He what?
You got John Austin upset. Woo.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know that there are certain rules that he talked about that I didn't fully recognize the extent of them. As in the infrastructure bill, the trillions of dollars going there. What he pointed out is a lot of that money is not going to go to Black people because of racist unions, right? Like some of the unions are so racist that money is going to go to them, but they're going to keep that money. They're not going to be hiring Black people. They're going to be exclusive. And that's just infuriating. As in, like, if they are racist and are excluding Black people, then at that point, they don't need to exist, right? Like, if you're racist and you are excluding and you are deliberately keeping opportunity away from Black people in 2021, kick rocks. I mean, like, let the Republicans take them, right? Like, the Republicans are anti-union. If they're anti-Black, I'm anti-union too, right? The ones who are the unions who are anti-Black, I am anti-union for them if they're keeping opportunities from them. But it was like there was this little, there were these laws that say, like, all these billions of dollars have to go to these racist institutions, and that keeps money away from Black people. And to the point where they have exceptions. He broke it down, like, at the point that there are these exceptions. And I thought that, and they were just trying to raise the exceptions that don't have to go to unions so that Black people can get some of that money. And I think that's ridiculous that that's the paradigm, right? Like, we have, like, instead of dealing with just the racist unions, right? That you have to be like, well, let's set aside this amount of money, this smaller amount of money, so that the little bit that Black people can access to. I think that's crazy. And it's the first time I heard it articulated like that.
Oh yeah, no, it's the story of this country.
The distribution. Hello.
Ain't nothing new. Is that Doc? Doc, you back?
Sorry. I think there was a disconnection on my part. But
did you hear the question?
No, one, I just wanted to thank y'all for having me on. I appreciate y'all. Two, Congressman Payne Jr., thank you for being our cheerleader on the Hill, but also for your personal and just your passion, your purpose, your mission, your passion. I think this is a legacy fight for you that definitely would, that would lead to a lot of change, not only due to the policy that you've introduced, but awareness. PAD has never seen this awareness because of what you've done for it. So we want to thank you on behalf of, everyone who's fighting this battle every day. And please have me back whenever y'all, want to talk about cardiovascular issues. I'm more than happy to have the discussion.
Okay, Donna has a question that you have to answer.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hey, Donna, what's up?
Okay. So we wanted to know, you've been here before, so you've probably been asked this question before. This is a hip-hop political talk show. So what hip-hop artists and or group are you listening to these days?
I have my DMX sweatshirt right on right now. X died recently. So, right now, albums that I'm listening to are... I like J. Cole. He has a new track that just came out today, Interlude. He has a new album coming out in about a week or so. Jay-Z is my favorite alive. Tupac is and Biggie are my top, my top three with Nas. That's kind of who I am. And then if I'm doing a procedure and I'm having a challenge, I put on some Rick Ross. Funny enough.
Yeah, it's funny because I noticed that.
Ross is from Clarksdale, Mississippi, right next door. So yeah, he gets me through some of the
I know, and we are going to have you back, Donna. We're going to have we just want to make sure that we respect everyone's time. We know you're going to go one more, so we're
no. I'm just going to say that. I was just going to say. So while you're operating, you're listening to Rick Ross.
Yeah, my whole staff knows that. Nigerian music or Rick Ross,
nice.
Jay-Z, Biggie, Pop.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, that's how I roll.
That's what's up. Okay.
And
Yeah.
yes, thank you so much. And what we'll do is we'll give Congressman Payne the last word.
Good night.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay.
God
Thank
bless.
you,
God
everybody.
bless. God bless.
All right.
All right. Take care.
Take
All
care.
politics are
Show,
local.
everybody.
All politics are local. Another week. Good night, and we'll see you next week.
You don't stop.